The setting sun in the next night was particularly bright. The sun shines through the window, bringing a bit of warmth to the room, and a young man lying on the bed is enjoying the baptism from the sun. He seems to be in a half-asleep and half-awake status. He felt something was wrong. After all, urban villages in first-tier cities were not entitled to see the sun. He opened his eyes in a daze, staring at the ceiling blankly. The passage of time caused his state to turn around. He yawned and got up to look around. At this moment, he finally found something wrong. Everything in the room made him feel strange. He massaged his temples and began to recall what happened yesterday. It seems that I was drinking at home last night. How did I get to this place? Am I still dreaming? A series of questions kept coming to his mind, causing his hands to slap his thighs involuntarily, and the instant pain made him completely awake. Ah, it really hurts. It doesn't look like I'm dreaming, so what's going on with me now? He pushed the quilt off the bed, rubbed his thighs and began to walk around the room. Looking up at the whole room, it is clear at a glance that the whole space is not large, but the space is fully utilized, and the light blue wallpaper makes the room tone more peaceful, making people more relaxed. The items in the room are very complicated, but they are relatively neatly placed on the whole. It seems that the owner of the room knows where his things are placed. The most conspicuous among them is the poster hanging by the window, Einstein's Gaze, which made him more awake. The desk is filled with all kinds of learning materials, and looking along the top is a variety of photographic works, including landscapes and people. These arrangements made him speculate that this was a student's room, but this did not bring him much help. Not only did he not solve the doubts in his heart, but it increased. He looked around again, looking for new clues, and this observation made his eyes shine. The bedside table on the other side caught his attention. There was a rocket model and a photo frame on the cabinet. Feeling that the truth of the matter was about to be revealed, he couldn't help speeding up his pace, jumped over the bed and picked up the photo frame to watch carefully. It looked like a group photo of a family of 3, and the 3 people in the photo made him feel very familiar, but there was no way to say their names, as if his throat was blocked by a foreign object. Just when he was extremely puzzled, there was a sound from the door. "Peter, is the room ready? Remember to come down for dinner later. Your Uncle Ben has been promoted and raised his salary, so he specially bought a big meal to celebrate." The sudden question made him not know what to say for a while, but fortunately, his body could not help but replied at this time, "Good Aunt May. Got it, I will go down in a while." Peter. Aunt May. His brain seemed to touch some switch, and fragments of memory rushed into his head like a tidal wave. Many fragments of life that he had never experienced began to be stuffed into the depths of his brain, like a force-feeding duck, and waves of pain came to him head-on. He began to feel a double image in front of his eyes, and his head hit the floor involuntarily under the pain. He wanted to use this to relieve the severe pain in his head. 2 completely different memories are like 2 armies, constantly fighting in his mind. On one side are the long and complicated memories of ordinary office workers, and on the other side are the memories of American college students. Gradually, the 2 memories began to overlap and merge continuously, making it impossible for him to distinguish which one was the real self for a while. The sun has gradually shone on his pale face, and his head is blank at this time, and the classic 3 questions of life can't help appearing in his mind. Who am I? Where am I? What am I doing? After pondering for a long time without getting an answer, Peter got up from the ground with great difficulty, staggered to the bathroom and washed his face. The cool water slid across his cheeks, which finally eased the pain in his brain. When he raised his head, he saw a face that was both familiar and unfamiliar. Looking at himself in the mirror, he became dazed. I'm an ordinary office worker. And an American college student. Peter Parker. All kinds of feelings rushed into my heart all of a sudden, and I didn't know what words to use to describe the feelings at this moment. Knocking his drowsy head, Peter slowly walked back to the room step by step, gradually calming down his mind, and began to sort out the fused memories along the pictures in his mind. This familiar yet unfamiliar face is an American college student, Peter Parker, with an extremely common name. Just like the name, in these 18 years Peter's life was like still water, without any waves, living a normal life like ordinary people. And a month ago, an accident changed everything. Peter was bitten by a spider that fell from the sky at a technology exhibition, and the spider's toxin mutated in his body, thus he gained the spider ability. At this moment, he could clearly feel that his body was full of rapid and infinite vigor and vitality, and everything in the world seemed to have opened the door to him again. Looking at the palms of his hands, he saw that they were covered with densely packed small hooks. At the same time, he felt that he could control these hooks. When he moved his heart, the hooks disappeared instantly, and with a little more force, the hooks reappeared. And the high myopia he used to have disappeared. He can see mosquitoes flying past tens of meters away, and the sound of Aunt May's breathing downstairs seems to be ringing in his ears. It's just that when he saw a light blue schoolbag at the foot of the bed, his memory became confused, as if he had missed some very important details. With the constant recollection, his head started to hurt again, and he even started to ask himself, this schoolbag should not appear here in his memory, so where should it be placed? The pain made Peter not want to think anymore. He chose to rush over directly, endured the pain and reached out to pick up his schoolbag to have a look. A large number of $100 bills piled up came into his eyes. Doubt came to my mind again, and I simply estimated that there was at least $50 to $100 in this schoolbag. This is undoubtedly a huge sum of money, but how did he get it? At the same time, an abrupt voice suddenly appeared in my mind. The system has successfully traversed, has passed the review of the will of the world, and is temporarily activated. Peter was even more confused, looked around subconsciously, lowered his voice to the lowest and asked, "What are you talking about? Who is it? Who is talking to me? Come out. The system is ready. Entering the countdown to 5 4 3 2 1. This sudden voice did not answer Peter's question, but was still talking to himself. Accompanied by the final countdown of the voice, Peter felt that there seemed to be something more in his mind. The pain was decreasing, and an explanatory panel was projected in the pupil. The host has successfully fused memory and achieved the prerequisites for activating the system. This system has always adhered to the principle of God rewarding hard work, and officially released the task. For this outrageous and shameless principle, Peter just wanted to complain. Then you should quit the system group chat, and lose the face of the system family. Difficult to understand. The death of Uncle Ben is an indelible pain for every Spider-Man. Please cherish this rare opportunity to achieve a miraculous counterattack. Reward. The system is upgraded to the permanent version, and a gift package for newbies will be presented. Friendly reminder. If the mission fails, the system will automatically disengage without affecting the host. It doesn't matter, then why it is specially marked. It is still in large font. I will believe you, a big talker, your system is really broken. After recovering the panel, this time looking at the $100 bill in front of me, the memory in my mind has been successfully retrieved. Black boxing, black-hearted boss, pistol, robbery, Sandman, death. This series of intermittent memory fragments gradually emerged, making the brain started a new round of brainstorming. He recalled many images, not only the experience of the last 2 weeks, but also comics and movies related to Spider-Man. The comparison between the two has led to a rough guess. If this is black boxing money, then it means that Uncle Ben is very likely to be shot dead on the way home tonight. Thinking of this, Peter couldn't sit still. He turned around, picked up his coat and ran downstairs. He couldn't help but attach great importance to this guess. He was just worried that if something happened, the ominous guess would turn into a real tragedy, which was not the result he wanted to accept. Aunt May, who was preparing dinner in the kitchen, just heard Peter's voice coming downstairs, was about to say something, when she turned around and saw Peter's figure leaving in a hurry. Aunt May could only helplessly murmur to herself, "Where is this kid going in such a hurry? This guy hasn't come back yet. It seems that these dishes will be hot for a while." Peter rushed out of the house quickly, and the first thing he saw was a section of familiar yet unfamiliar streets, endless traffic, and hurried pedestrians. All these pictures seem to describe the beauty of the new world, and a very wonderful feeling arises from the heart, which cannot be described in words. It's just that with the passage of time, the ominous premonition in Peter's heart is getting more and more, so that he has no time to stop running. Moreover, there is no obvious sign of where the shooting occurred in Peter's memory, and there are at least 5 matching locations. Peter crossed pedestrians, zebra crossings, and overtook the bus that was driving on the road. In the eyes of pedestrians on the road, he has become a flashing shadow. First, no second, no third, still no. Searching for one location after another was unsuccessful. In just 5 minutes, Peter had run nearly 7 or 8 kilometers. Fortunately, in the 5th location, he finally saw the familiar figure of Uncle Ben at the corner of the street. Uncle Ben was holding a big bag of food, standing in front of his car with a smile on his face, as if he was looking forward to the big meal at home, and was about to get in the car and go home. It's just that the next scene made Peter turn pale with fright. 2 figures surrounded Uncle Ben and walked behind him, blocking most of his sight with their bodies. I saw that the 2 had a clear division of labor, and one of them took out a pistol from his coat, pointed it at Uncle Ben's waist, and was ready to shoot at any time. The other person, later the Sandman, immediately stepped forward and whispered, "Be quiet, man, As long as you don't mess around, we won't hurt you. You just need to give us the key, and we will let you go. The weather-beaten Uncle Ben instantly knew what happened to him. He immediately calmed down and said in the most peaceful voice, "The car key is in the right pocket of the coat. Just take it." The gunman standing on the side seemed to dislike the efficiency of the Sandman, so he pushed the Sandman away and said fiercely, "Stop talking nonsense. Are you teaching me how to do things? Old man, take out the key for me now. Have you understood?" After speaking, he was about to punch Uncle Ben in the stomach, but the Sandman grabbed the gunman and persuaded him, "Don't worry about it, we have to get out of here first." But fate played tricks on the world again at this time. Not far away, a patrolling police car was driving towards him. Its speed was getting slower and slower, as if it was about to stop in front of it. Peter noticed the collapsed expression of the gunman, as if a frightened bird might erupt at any time. He knew that he should act, and rushed over with one stride. As expected, things were going in the direction he least wanted to see. After the gunman saw the police car, he gradually became irritable. The Sandman standing aside also noticed the police car ahead, and continued to persuade, "Calm down, don't panic, don't shoot." But this time, the gunman didn't listen to the Sandman's advice, and said angrily, "Old man, it turns out that you are delaying time, so go to hell with me." The gunman immediately pulled the trigger, fired several shots at Uncle Ben, and then ran towards the alley not far away without looking back. As for his accomplice, Sharon, he said he didn't know him. The sound of the gunshot startled Peter, who was still 10 meters away, and shouted in his heart, "Hurry up, hurry up, hurry up." At this moment, his body seemed to break through a kind of limitation. Everything in his eyes was slowing down. The Sandman's angry face, the police car braking suddenly, Uncle Ben's shocked eyes, and the trajectory of the bullet. Leap forward in the direction of Uncle Ben. Let your body stretch as far as possible in the air, and prepare for the worst. Block the bullet with your body. At the last moment, Peter grabbed Uncle Ben's shoulders, and the two hugged the ground together, and the bullets whizzed past from above and hit the car door. Gunshots, car sirens, warnings from the police, screams from pedestrians. One after another, this quiet street seems to have heard a call to wake up again. At this moment, Uncle Ben also came to his senses, realized the current situation. His eyes showed endless worry, and asked quickly, "Peter, are you okay?" Peter shook his head to show that he had no problem, and looked at the gunman who was walking away. "Uncle Ben, wait for me here for a while, I'll be right back." After adjusting his breathing, he chased out. Although the gunman was very familiar with the terrain in this area, these efforts were at a loss at Peter's speed. He soon caught up with the gunman. Peter didn't want to waste any more words on this murderer who tried to kill Uncle Ben. The gunman flew out, spitting blood and doing a classic rolling motion on the ground, but his reaction was not slow, and he had already pulled out his pistol in a panic. But Peter would not give him a chance to shoot. He stepped forward and grabbed the gunman's legs again, threw it backwards, presented him with an ascension package, and kicked the pistol to the other side. The earth made close contact with the head of the gunman, and fell into a semi-comatose state. At this time, Uncle Ben also arrived, and quickly stepped forward to hug Peter. "Calm down, my child, and leave the rest to the police." Congratulations to the host for successfully completing the mission and realizing the miracle. The system has formally submitted an application to World Consciousness. It is estimated that the upgrade will take 1 day, please wait patiently. Afterwards, Peter and Uncle Ben followed the patrolman back to the police station and carried out a series of work procedures. After a lot of tossing, it was already past 9 o'clock in the evening when Uncle Peter and the two returned home. Before opening the door, Uncle Ben saw Peter's dignified expression, and comforted him with a smile. "Relax, don't make a sad face, just smile, and don't tell your Aunt May about this, lest she worry about it, and remember to control it later. Good expression." Peter nodded to express his understanding, and he adjusted his state before entering the room. After all, Aunt May still has a good observation ability. Seeing the figures of the two entering the room, Aunt May, who had been waiting for a long time, quickly took out the tableware from the kitchen and was about to serve the meal. She took advantage of the situation and asked. Peter hastened to eat. Why did he come back now? What happened? Under Aunt May's gaze, Peter suddenly had nothing to say, and naturally stepped aside to let the main players play. Turning around, he blamed Uncle Ben on the side and said, "Uncle, Auntie asked you what happened, and you came back so late." After speaking, Peter sat down quietly and started to eat, to be a qualified melon eater, not to mention that the food is really delicious. The main character, Uncle Ben, made his debut on the stage. He gave Peter a contemptuous look, and took out a small exquisitely packaged box from his arms and said, Dang, May, guess what's inside? Seeing this scene, Peter almost laughed out loud, and Aunt May was also confused, and could only respond with a puzzled look, with a hint of murderous intent. Uncle Ben opened the box with confidence and took out the necklace. He looked at Aunt May affectionately and said, "Didn't I ask you to choose a piece of jewelry before? Today is our exclusive anniversary, and I will bring it for you." Aunt May recalled it in an instant, blushing a little and said, "You old bastard, you are a man of your age, and you still play this trick." Watching the interaction between the two, Peter, who was eating melons, suddenly felt that the food in front of him was not delicious, and a lot of dog food was stuffed into his mouth, and now his mouth was full of dog food. Face. Aunt May noticed her nephew's gaze, and said awkwardly, "Peter, let's eat, ignore him." "No, I'm full, you guys eat slowly." Of course, the big light bulb at the moment. Peter knew that his status as a melon-eating crowd should be cancelled, so he left the dinner table consciously and left the venue to the couple. After leaving the meal, Peter's first choice was of course to take a half-day tour in the bathtub. After tidying up, Peter, who was lying in GEU's room, had only one thought, which was to be comfortable, as expected of a bathtub, and continue tomorrow. Peter struggled to get up from the bed, because there was still one big thing to do, to get a comprehensive understanding of this new world. After 2 hours of online collection, Peter was able to deeply feel the malice in this world, and the predictions on the way home were basically indistinguishable. This is a world where multiple superheroes are mixed, a world where many superheroes and supervillains coexist. In this world, there is Captain America Steve Rogers, who single-handedly changed the situation of World War E and laid the foundation for the victory of World War E. This world also has the Stark Industries Group. They are the world's largest arms manufacturer, with weapons all over the world. There is also the Osborn Group, which is at the top level in the world in the field of biology and medicine. All these news proved to Peter that the world was dangerous all the time, not to mention the hidden ghosts and monsters. Moreover, many bigwigs in the Marvel Universe don't know which ones have gone wrong, and they are about to destroy the world at every turn. The famous Thanos, the director of the Family Planning Office of the universe, wants to snap his fingers all day long to make half of the random people in the universe disappear. In addition, there is also Dormammu, the Dark Lord who likes to negotiate conditions, Hela, who is a serious brother's control, Ronan who died of a dance, and Malekith who is so dark. Although during the development of the plot, the crises brought about by these big bosses have been resolved one by one, but this world already has many different factors, and whether the subsequent things can still develop according to the plot depends on everything unknown. If there is a butterfly effect, it will be a catastrophe. When Peter thought of this, his scalp felt numb. He could completely imagine life after the accident. It was like a coffee table full of cups and utensils. It was a completely sad story. Shaking his head to cheer himself up, he continued to search for new information on the internet. He needed to know the timeline of this world, but repeated blind searches made it impossible for him to find valuable information. Peter chose to come to the bathroom, flooded his head with cold water, tried his best to calm down his brain as quickly as possible, and reorganized his thoughts. He needed to find a starting point to integrate the memories in his mind. Peter decided to choose the relatively familiar Tony Stark as the starting point. He knew that the timeline established in this way would not be comprehensive enough, but it was better than knowing nothing about the world now. I went back to the computer and searched again, and found that the hot search for the recent lace news was about Tony Stark, all kinds of romantic parties, playing small games with young ladies from all over the world. Before Peter could breathe a sigh of relief, a piece of news also revealed that Tony Stark will go to the Middle East to demonstrate new weapons in the near future. The time was more than half a month ago, which means that the day when Tony Stark announced, "I am Iron Man," to the world is not far away. The shortest is half a year, and the longest will not exceed 1 year. Peter continued to rummage through the memories in his mind, and the next thing should be Captain America was found and awakened by S.H.I.E.L.D. All in all, after Iron Man announced his identity to the world, New York City will usher in the days when heroes and criminals will appear in turn, bringing continuous beatings to people's lives. So this period of time should be regarded as the last peaceful life of people in New York City, after which they will live a magical and dreamy life. But now the only thing to be thankful for is that he has obtained the spider ability, otherwise how he will spend the days after that is a question mark. After a short operation on the internet, I barely grasped the timeline I was in. Although the worries in his heart were not relieved in any way, but in the spirit of AQ, Peter decided to turn off the computer and go to bed. Ring ring ring, ring ring ring, ring ring ring. The sound of the alarm clock rang again and again in the room, and the people under the quilt tried to avoid the sound wave attack no matter what, and finally stretched out a pair of hands from the quilt to pick up the alarm clock. It's just that today's hands seem to be bewitched, and he still can't turn off the alarm clock. In desperation, he chose to open his closed eyes. It's just that when my eyes saw the numbers on the alarm clock, there was only one thought left in my mind. It was 6:50. I was going to be late, my full attendance was going to be gone, and I was going to eat dirt again this month. Thinking of this, he immediately jumped up from the bed, but he didn't expect to use too much force, and the whole person flew up directly. Fortunately, he reacted in time before hitting the wall, and his limbs worked together to hang from the ceiling like a spider. The ceiling and the inverted space in front of him made him fully awake. Just yesterday he realized his childhood dream, time travel, and became the man who will be called Spider-Man in the future, Peter Parker. It's just that an inexplicable sadness suddenly came to his heart for some reason, and he was stunned for a while, but he couldn't give himself a satisfactory answer after thinking for a long time. In order to avoid waking Uncle Ben and the others, he returned to the bed lightly, but unfortunately he lay back on the bed again and couldn't fall asleep after tossing and turning. Peter got up and came to the mirror. Even after sorting out the memories in his mind again, he still felt extremely incredible. The change made him feel extremely unreal. Before, he was just a middle-aged greasy uncle who was about to enter his 30s. His parents were still alive, he had younger brothers and younger sisters, and he had no house or car. In terms of career, I am an office worker who enjoys the 996 blessings in the first-tier cities. My monthly income is not enough compared to the top, and more than the bottom. Did not hold back the country. Originally, he was just like the thousands of ordinary people in the society, living an ordinary life every day. What I didn't expect was that a plot like time travel that only appeared in novels would happen to him one day. There were no fatalities in car accidents, no violent storms, and no alien abductions. Such major events happen. It's just a rare office worker who stays at home on vacation. He drank a little wine in the evening when he was bored, but when he woke up the next day, he found that he had come to a new world. I opened the curtains and looked at the outside world, only to find that the sky was still dark at this time, and there were only faint lights on the street. The difference outside the window made Peter suspicious. He took out his mobile phone and looked at it, only to realize that there was a problem with the alarm clock, and it was only 4 o'clock in the morning. Suddenly, various thoughts appeared in my mind. You have seen New York at 4 o'clock in the morning. I have seen it. Why is it 4 characters? Does it mean that Uzi is not working? While entertaining myself, a voice appeared out of thin air. The system has been upgraded. Please give me more advice in the future. Host. Peter Parker Essence. Steady, from the heart. Ability. Spider ability, initial threshold. Evaluation. A rookie with the ability of a spider, full of potential, can barely survive in the Marvel world? Peter retorted. It's basically a slander to my personality. This is obviously a prudence, and it is a fine tradition passed down by our family for many years. In-depth research found that the energy of this system actually comes from the physical strength of the host. As long as it is turned on, it needs to absorb physical strength. He continued to complain. This still has the physical strength of Spider-Man. If it is time travel to become an ordinary person, wouldn't it be possible to complete the upgrade until the gray hair is gray? By then, I will probably be cold. The system will select the optimal growth route based on the host's nature, and start to collect data from the outside world. It has detected the most suitable growth route for the host in this world, a superhero. Do you want to activate the superhero route, and do you want to receive a gift package for newcomers? No. Why is the superhero route the best? Why do I think you are emphasizing something else? After thinking about it for a while, Peter finally chose to agree. After all, the old saying goes, well, if you don't want a child, you won't be able to trap a wolf, and if you don't enter the tiger's den, you won't be a tiger's cub. The moment he made the choice, his body seemed to be hollowed out, and he was lying on the bed weakly, his limbs were shaking. I'm going. Can't I notify in advance if I draw energy? I hope I can get my money back, or I will lose a lot in this wave. Peter said through gritted teeth. Thank you for the host's reminder. The reminder function has been added. Also please the host to believe in the professionalism of the system, which is absolutely worth the money. It is tailor-made for the host. The target of the host has always been the initial principle of action of the system. The first step for a real superhero is to have a suit of his own. After detecting that the host has spider abilities, he specially prepared the most conscientious battlesuit for the host, the legendary Nano Spider Suit. One word perfect overview, handsome. Then, does the suit have no other functions? Of course, you only need the host to upgrade himself, and you can have all of them. Of course, the most important function is to allow the host to transform into the most handsome cub in the crowd anytime, anywhere. Suddenly there was a cold wind blowing by the window, which made Peter seem to see a group of crows flying by and shouting, "Idiot, big idiot." The anger in Peter's heart continued to burn, and he finally yelled, "I'm going. You're just a sand sculpture. Someone else's is an artificial intelligence. Are you an artificial mentally retarded person, or are you at the level of 100, mentally retarded?" The host, "Please don't swear at will, be a civilized person, and contribute to the construction of a civilized society. Besides, please don't doubt the system's principle of action." The system clearly detects the host's initial thoughts. Strength is only temporary, and handsomeness is a lifetime thing. "Well, I don't deny that this is the truth, so do you have other functions?" Peter was refuted to be incoherent, and quickly changed the topic. As the saying goes, if you want to become a real superhero, prestige is essential. Reputation serves two functions in the system. One, in the system, you can draw a lottery by consuming prestige points, 100 prestige points each time, to get a variety of abilities and items, ranging from various black technologies and superpowers to daily necessities. It has it all. 2, prestige can be converted into points in the system. 100 prestige points are equal to 1 point. Use points to improve one's own basic attributes and strengthen control over one's own abilities. Currently, the system will give the host an S-level lottery chance for free. The first draw will give you a super high combat power. Please don't hesitate to host. Here, the chance to become a god in one step is no longer an illusion. The so-called opportunity cannot be missed, lost, never to return. Could this system be developed by Krypton Gold Company, a subsidiary of Big Penguin? This routine is one after another, and the lottery system in front of him seems to be shining charmingly on him. Trying to calm down my mind, but looking at the various abilities on the roulette: Golden Superman's Power Seed, Batman's Money Ability, Flash's Speed Force. It really makes people drool, but the experience of the non-chief once told him not to think so many useless things. It is impossible to win the lottery. There seemed to be hallucinations in my mind again, and a voice appeared in my ear and said temptingly, "Anyway, it's free, and there will be no loss. If you don't smoke for free, waste is an extremely shameful behavior." Under the temptation over and over again, Peter found that his hands had gradually lost control, and he couldn't help but click the button for the lottery, feeling powerless again. Congratulations to the host for getting the Phoenix Fruit, optimized version, in one piece. It has been detected that the host already has the spider ability. Please be prepared, the system will fuse the two parties. Ready? Damn, is this the so-called reminder function? It's obviously a scam, the system. All never end with you. The exhaustion accumulated from drawing energy for many times came like a tide, and this time Peter was powerless to stop, and soon fell asleep. Ding dong, a brand new day has arrived, and the task list has been opened. Daily tasks for novice heroes. 1. Get 100 points of reputation. Obtain 0 reputation is the foundation of hero growth. High reputation will bring high-speed growth to the host. 2. Stop 50 crimes from happening. Completed 0, you can get a lot of reputation. Task reward. Activate the virtual training room module, and draw a lottery for D-level items once. The host's ability has been integrated. Please embark on a new journey. Announce your arrival to the world. Let the world cheer for you, and let the criminals tremble when they hear your name. After hearing this, Peter, who just woke up, hurriedly came to the half-length mirror, whispered about transforming. Nanometers began to appear on his chest, and nanometers covered his whole body in an instant to complete the dress. The battlesuit is still the classic red and blue. The defense ability is enough to block the sudden bullets, and the battlesuit can repair itself if it is damaged. It also has a certain psychedelic function, can change colors according to different environments, and can effectively hide one's true identity. Peter started to spin and jump around the room tentatively, launching spider silk around, having fun, and the room turned into a spider silk cave after a while. After the Phoenix Fruit is fused with the spider's ability, it is no longer afraid of seawater. The sky blue flame can cover the spider silk, making the spider silk have burning and medical effects, and it also greatly improves the body's resistance and recovery. Host. Peter Parker Essence. Robust. Abilities. Spider ability, beginning threshold. Phoenix Fruit, 10% fused. Primary self-healing body, evolvable. Equipment. Nano Spider Battlesuit, to be upgraded. Evaluation. A C-level hero with 2 major abilities. Now you are qualified to step out of your backyard and take a look at the city. Peter looked at the face in the mirror and said silently, "Hello, Peter Parker, please take care of me in the days to come." Peter, wake up, it's time to go down for breakfast. Uncle Ben's voice came from downstairs, reminding Peter. Uncle Ben, you eat first, I'll go down now. Peter responded immediately, frantically cleaning the cobwebs in the room so that Uncle Ben wouldn't worry about seeing it. After some tidying up, when Peter came downstairs, Uncle Ben and Aunt May had disappeared. I saw a post-it note left on the table, which said, "Good morning, Peter, your Uncle Ben and I have something urgent to go out first. I put breakfast and milk on the table, remember to eat them all." After thinking about it during breakfast time, Peter chose to try to complete the task. After all, this is the legendary Marvel world. Simply struggling can't escape the arrival of fate, and it will make it even more difficult for him. After careful research on the mission, Peter decided to memorize the map of New York City at home, store the main streets and intersections in the city in his mind, and make full preparations for the first mission to avoid getting lost. Since you want to prevent crime from happening, you must go to a place with a high crime rate. And Hell's Kitchen is the place with the highest crime rate in the city, and it can be called a criminal's dream paradise. There's everyone in Hell's Kitchen, from drug dealers and pimps to kingpins, the Hand, and even Hydra members who yell to chop off one head and grow two more. After dinner in the evening, Peter briefly told Aunt May about the possibility of returning home late, so as not to worry them, so he chose the bus as his means of travel. It's a pity that the first step of the action was not smooth. The bus he took passed through Hell's Kitchen but didn't stop. In the end, he didn't realize it until he reached the terminal. After several inquiries, I found out the reason. It turned out that Hell's Kitchen has a bad reputation. Generally, buses that don't go directly to Hell's Kitchen will not stop. Once passengers get on this type of bus, they often choose to get off one stop earlier, and then walk into Hell's Kitchen. Peter had nothing to say. He could only admit that he was inexperienced, and didn't take this into consideration, so he hurriedly bought a ticket at the terminal and sat back. After more than an hour of bus journey, Peter finally came to Hell's Kitchen, looked at the area in front of him and said to himself, "Peter, calm down, take a deep breath, don't panic. Transform." Wearing a battle suit made Peter gradually calm down. After observing that there were no cameras around, Peter shot spider webs and quickly shuttled between buildings. At this time, Hell's Kitchen looked extremely deserted, and there were only a few flickering streetlights left on the street, emitting a faint light in the darkness. Compared with the Queens where I live, the first feeling Hell's Kitchen brings to people is depression, like an abyss, which makes people feel inexplicably uncomfortable. The current time is past 8 o'clock in the evening, and the only few convenience stores on the street have been closed. In other areas, even at 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, the streets are still crowded and brightly lit. Peter, who had settled down, wandered back and forth in this area for nearly 2 hours, but he didn't encounter a single crime, and even he only encountered 2 or 3 passers-by walking on the street. Is it really an evil thing? Could it be that these gangsters are all on vacation today, and no one has been seen? At this time, it was close to 11 o'clock in the evening, and Peter decided to go home if he still didn't find it after a while. Suddenly he heard the sound of arguing in the distance, and suddenly he became energetic, and quickly sent out spider threads to rush to the scene. In the alley, a tall tattooed man punched the lady down to the ground, picked up the wallet in the lady's arms, and said fiercely, "I advise you to let go of your hands obediently, or I will stab you to death later. I'm leaving, you bitch. Please, sir, this is my daughter's medical expenses. She is still in the hospital for surgery. Without this money, she will die. Give me the money." Although the woman was already trembling with fear, she still hugged the tattooed man's trousers tightly and begged. Between the child and her own safety, she had obviously made a choice. "Where do you come from? So much nonsense, who cares about you?" The tattooed man slapped the woman directly on the face, and then punched and kicked. "I think you are shameless, let me help you reunite with your child." Not far away, Peter, who just arrived, was planning to use spider silk to tie the tattooed man directly to avoid accidental injury to the woman who fell to the ground, but he didn't expect to make a sound when he landed, which alarmed the tattooed man who was beating him violently. The tattooed man's reaction was also extremely fast. He immediately took out his switchblade and prepared for battle, and shouted, "Who is it? I advise you not to come here to cause trouble. This is the territory of our Stotch family. I'm going. I'm careless." Peter strictly abided by the principles of the villain dying if he talks too much, and the enemy lying down, etc., and directly stepped forward to send a flying kick to the tattooed man. The tattooed man didn't expect that the people he met this time would be so rampant, and he didn't give them any face from the Stotch family. The whole person flew backwards and barely stopped when he hit the wall. The wallet, cash, lighter and other items he carried were scattered everywhere. However, This did not make the tattooed man want to retreat. On the contrary, it further aroused his ferocity. He quickly adjusted his posture with his back against the wall, and rushed over with a stride. The switchblade in his hand aimed precisely at Peter's waist. At first glance, he has a wealth of experience in stabbing people, and knows which part of the body is the most deadly. If this knife hits, even if he does not die, he will be severely disabled. Although he was a little surprised at the viciousness of the tattooed man, Peter didn't intend to give it a chance, and quickly shot spider webs to cover the tattooed man's eyes. Grabbing the tattooed man's wrist and taking the switchblade away, he punched the tattooed man hard. Under Peter's tremendous force, the tattooed man was powerless to resist and finally fell to the ground in pain from the beating. After carefully checking whether the tattooed man really passed out, Peter quickly helped the lady who was lying aside, picked up the wallet on the ground and handed it over. "Are you all right, lady? This is your wallet. Please take it away." At this time, the lady came to her senses, took the wallet and thanked her quickly. "Thank you. This is my daughter's medical expenses. Thank you so much." "You're welcome, ma'am, as long as you're fine." Peter then thought about it and picked up nearly $3,000 from the ground. He guessed that this should be all the guy's income tonight. "Ma'am, you can take these too, your children should need these." Peter handed over the money in his hand. Seeing the struggle on the lady's face, he persuaded, "Ma'am, you don't need to hesitate, just treat it as this guy's compensation for your medical expenses." The lady finally chose to accept it, because she and his daughter really needed the money, and finally said incoherently, thank you so much. I don't know what to say." "It's okay, ma'am, get out of here quickly, these are still not safe, I'll take care of the next thing." After Peter watched the lady leave the alley, he also turned around and left. The unconscious tattooed man should naturally let him stay here to fend for himself. As for calling the police or something, it would be too troublesome. I thought this would be the beginning of a legendary, but I didn't expect it to be the peak period. During the next wandering, there was no movement in this area. Finally seeing that the time was approaching the early hours of the morning, Peter ended his first vigilante trip in his life, and chose to return to his original intention, taking the bus home. When Peter returned home, it was already past 1 o'clock in the morning. After simply washing up and lying on the bed, he found that he had no mood to sleep. He was in a state of excitement. He turned on the system to check the results of the first action. Daily tasks for novice heroes. 1. Get 100 points of reputation. 2 points have been obtained. Reputation is the foundation of hero growth. High reputation will bring high-speed growth to the host. 2. Stop 50 crimes from happening. 1 case has been completed. You can get a lot of reputation. Task reward. Activate the virtual training room module, and draw a lottery for D-level items once. The truth is extremely cruel. After working all night, the result was that only 1 crime was prevented, and the efficiency of his actions was extremely low. The biggest enemy Peter faces now is not vicious criminals with knives and guns, but not knowing where to find them. He neither has the so-called mind-reading ability, which can see through the essence of a person at a glance, nor does he have the high technology of Batman, who can observe the whole city in real time and know every move of the city at any time. If it continues at this speed, I personally estimate that it will take at least half a year to complete the novice task. This is based on the harvest tonight. If there is an accident and there is nothing all night, then everything will really be cold. Sure enough, 360 lines, each line has its own rules, and this superhero is not as good as I imagined. If there is a superhero training class, it will be perfect. I must be the first to sign up. Peter lay on the bed, and the more he thought about it, the more upset he became. I don't want to think about it so much. I will continue tomorrow. I don't believe it. I'm afraid I won't be able to complete the task in such a good place as Hell's Kitchen. In this way, time passed quickly. Counting today, it was already the 6th day of Peter's trip to Hell's Kitchen. Every day he stayed until the early hours of the morning before going home, but the results were horrible. Sure enough, his previous worries came unsurprisingly. Of the 5 days that have been settled, only the first 2 days have yielded results. For the next 3 days, there was nothing but nothing. He has turned into an office worker, like a salted fish who clocks in and goes to and from work on time every day. At this moment, Peter was already on the verge of giving up, paralyzed on the roof of the building, motionless, not wanting to go anywhere but just staying quietly, exuding the smell of salted fish all over his body. Could it be that the luck of my previous African chief also followed? Other traversers are like fireflies in the dark, attracting enemies everywhere, but I only stopped 2 crimes in 5 nights in Hell's Kitchen, a place with a high crime rate. There is no reason, God, you are playing with me. Just when Peter was questioning his life, suddenly a little girl wearing a black coat, short purple hair wearing a small red flower, carrying a heavy school bag, jumping up and down the street came into his sight. Observing the little girl's surroundings, Peter could clearly see 3 strong men behind the little girl. When the little girl walked into the alley, the 3 bald men behind her showed indescribable smiles. Peter could only say that he felt extremely disgusted and angry, but on the other hand, he also saw hope, and he was unknowingly happy. Because tonight finally has a performance at the door, and tonight will achieve zero breakthrough and reach the pinnacle of life. Sure enough, God is still attached to me, little sister, don't be afraid. Your good neighbor Spider-Man will arrive soon, and promise to let you leave safely, please wait for me. Peter immediately jumped from the roof of the building more than 10 meters high, used the spider silk to complete several jumps in the air, and rushed to the alley in the shortest time. In order to attract attention and avoid the situation where these scumbags took hostages, Peter immediately shouted loudly when he landed, "You bastards, let go of that girl, let me. Pooh, do it all over again." Before finishing his well-prepared opening lines, Peter heard screams coming from the depths of the alley, which made him think he was late, so he hurriedly speeded up to find out. But the scene in front of him left Peter stunned. It was completely different from the original guess. The 3 bald men following him were all lying in a pool of blood. And the little girl with short purple hair was standing aside, recycling the knives on their bodies. Among them, a butterfly knife was pulled out from the throat, and blood gushed out like a spring. Gulu. Swallowing his saliva uncontrollably, he quickly shifted his gaze to the stars in the sky, and silently warned himself in his heart that he must control that damn curiosity and stop looking at those 3 corpses. Looking at the starry sky, Peter suddenly missed the days when he was an ordinary person. The sharpness of his facial features made many details of the 3 corpses appear in his eyes like a magnifying glass. Coupled with the visual impact of the scene like a slaughterhouse and the strong smell of blood, the throat is really almost uncontrollable, and it is sending out a dangerous signal it wants to vomit, it wants. The little girl turned her head and looked at Peter, who was standing on the sidelines, as if she saw Peter's predicament, and said, "Hey rookie, if you don't want to spit it out, stay away from here. And how old are your lines? It's too late, it's really bad. And if you want to be a hero, don't always hang around in the same area." What? After a while, Peter subconsciously asked back, "Wait a minute, how do you know? Who are you?" "I guessed it before, but now you told me." The little girl walked to the other side as she spoke, and began to collect valuables from the bald man. "I was tricked by a little girl, really." Peter scratched his head in embarrassment, but the little girl's outfit became more and more familiar to him. Purple short hair, wearing a black leather jacket and plaid skirt, although it is a normal little girl's dress in general, but there is a pink belt with the letter HG around her waist, and a butterfly knife and a samurai sword in her school bag. Peter gradually pieced together a complete jigsaw puzzle from memory, which was a small fragment of a movie called Kick-Ass. Joyful and interesting nursery rhymes were playing in the room, and the 11 or 12-year-old superkiller was fighting like nowhere with a knife in her hand, killing many strong men with ease like dancing. An innocent and lively little girl smiled and stood in the room where limbs and arms were flying all over the sky. Peter has never forgotten the extreme contrast brought about by this kind of vision. The images of the two gradually overlapped in Peter's mind. This little girl should be Superkiller, right? When Peter fell into memory, Superkiller had roughly cleaned up the scene, picked up her school bag and asked, "Rookie, can you go or not? People may come here at any time. We just have a deal that we want to make with you. If you are interested, just follow." After finishing speaking, Superkiller immediately ran towards the depths of the alley at an unusually fast speed, and Peter quickly followed without hesitation. After all, people have been killed here, so if you don't run now, when will you wait? He will be hard to tell when he is caught, and he won't be able to clean up by jumping into the Yellow River. Following Superkiller to the rooftop not far away, Peter was about to ask why he stopped when a figure came out from the shadow at the corner. A black battlesuit that perfectly blends into the night, with a black mask that is 80% similar to Batman on his face, and a belt around his waist, but with the letters BD on it. Peter speculates that this slightly gray-haired uncle should be the father of Superkiller, Big Daddy, a retired policeman. Big Daddy put the sniper rifle behind his back, looked at Peter's suit, and said in a low voice, "Hi Spider-Boy. This is not a place for us to communicate. Follow us to a safe place. Please rest assured, we are not enemy." After the Big Daddy finished speaking, he got up and left with the Superkiller girl. The two didn't care about Peter's thoughts at all, looking like, "Grandpa Zhang is fishing, and those who wish to take the bait, look." Peter hesitated for a moment, but he still chose to follow. In his memory, although the two of them had killed many times, they killed criminals who deserved their crimes. Generally speaking, they belonged to a superhero. And there is another most important reason: his action efficiency is too slow, and the completion of the novice task is far away, and the situation of this week made Peter feel desperate. Maybe I can take this opportunity to ask my Big Daddy for advice. After all, time is really running out, let alone stop and wait for my own growth. Under the cover of night, Peter, Superkiller, and Big Daddy walked on the roof and in the alley. Under the leadership of Big Daddy, the three came to a dilapidated building. Spider-Boy, you are welcome to follow. This is my safe house, come in. Big Daddy opened the rusty iron doorway. The first thing that catches the eye is the various weapons on the shelf: pistols, submachine guns, rifles, shotguns, sniper rifles. It can be said that it has everything that one expects to find. This is a small arsenal. It is not an exaggeration to say that there is no problem in starting a small-scale war with the equipment here. Peter can only use one sentence to describe his mood at this time. As expected of the Marvel world, as expected of the free charm, gun battles every day. Before that, Peter's knowledge of firearms was only from pictures on the internet, but now suddenly a room full of real guns was placed in front of him, which dazzled his eyes and felt a great sense of unreality. Peter couldn't help picking up a pistol, fondling it fondly. The first impression he gave was that it was smooth, cold, and solid, and it vividly showed Peter its unique charm. Big Daddy took the sniper rifle from his back, put it on the shelf, sat down on the chair next to him, and said, "Is there anything you like? You should be an adult, you can pick one and take it home later." Peter was a little moved when he heard it, but after thinking about it, he shook his head and refused the Big Daddy's meeting gift. Peter is very clear about his shooting level. In reality, he has never fired a gun and does not know about firearms. In the game, he is good at body strokes and casual shooting, which is nicknamed death by guns. At the same time, guns could not improve Peter's strength. Instead, he had to explain the origin of guns to his family and worry about hiding them. In general, the arrival of guns has done nothing for Peter. Peter put down the gun in his hand and asked, "What happened to the deal you mentioned before? I want to know." The many performances of Peter in front of him in the investigation of the past week made Big Daddy make up his mind and confess directly to Peter. "I have an enemy, and I lack a helper in the revenge plan. It just so happened that you appeared in Hell's Kitchen this week. Vigilante. Your body hides a huge potential, but you can't fully use it now, and I am sure to help you master this power in the shortest possible time and help you fight criminals." Hearing Big Daddy's compliment, although Peter felt a little blushed, he didn't explain anything. It can't be said that he came because of a system task. Big Daddy continued, "I hope that after the training is over, you can participate in my plan. But you can also rest assured that you are not the main force in the plan." After talking about the content of the transaction, Big Daddy stopped speaking. He knew that he needed to allow enough time for Peter to think and digest to complete the choice. Help. Enemies? Peter entered the memory again. According to the plot in the movie, Kick-Ass, Big Daddy was framed and imprisoned by a big drug lord named Frank Amick, and his family was ruined in the end. His wife was also killed by him. If it wasn't for the time when he was released from prison, the Superkiller would have died as well. At this moment, Superkiller blows bubblegum and asks, "Father, are you sure he is really competent? He is just a rookie now. I guess he doesn't even know how to find criminals. He has been doing this for a week. They'll just stay in the same place." Peter didn't know what to say to refute it at all, because what Superkiller said was an undeniable fact. If he knew how to find the criminal, it wouldn't have taken so many days to prevent 2 crimes. Looking back on his nearly 30 years of career in his last life, he spent most of his time in school. There is a saying that describes it as, "Neither did I study mathematics, physics and chemistry well, in liberal arts, nor did I have the ability to travel all over the world. There is no shining point in my 30 years of career that can make my parents proud. The word, ordinary, is enough to sum it all up." Although I can now confidently say that I have completely defeated Big Daddy and Superkiller in a one-on-one situation, such a comparison is meaningless. In the entire Marvel world, Big Daddy and Superkiller are at the level of ordinary people. Heroes such as Punisher, Iron Fist, and Daredevil are far more powerful than them, not to mention Iron Man, Thor, Hulk. In terms of finding criminals, it is estimated that the little girl who is Superkiller can beat him by dozens of streets, let alone the Big Daddy. If he hadn't been framed at the beginning, today's Big Daddy is at least the director of the Bureau. Identity. Marvel deserves to be called a hell-level world. It's really difficult for me. Peter lamented in his heart, when will his protagonist's aura arrive, and he is about to be overwhelmed. As soon as those real protagonists cross over, they can discuss with Iron Man Tony Stark how to make battlesuits, they can call Thor brothers, and they can make a group of elites of S.H.I.E.L.D. As for him, it is difficult to find criminals in this Hell's Kitchen, which is known as the highest crime rate in the country. It is really suspicious, and he thinks he is fooling the world without knowing it. People often say that a pig standing on the air vent can take off, but when a pig with no strength flies into the sky, the final result will only be to fall to the ground and die, and then it will be eaten by the long-awaited beasts and disappear. Clean and dry. Continuing to develop according to the current situation, he, Peter Parker, will have a great chance to become the pig eaten by the beasts. The biggest contribution may be to add a novel dining experience to the beasts on the table, and become a place for the beasts to chat after dinner. But he also needs to take into account that this is a complicated world, and no one can guarantee whether the big drug lord in the movie has a bigger backer in the real world. The thoughts in his mind became more and more chaotic, causing Peter to feel that his difficulty in choosing was about to strike again. Seeing the situation falling into silence, Big Daddy also understood the struggle in Peter's heart, and said, "You don't need to answer me in such a hurry now, go back and think carefully. When you think clearly, come to this place, and you can start at any time. Train." After speaking, he took out a blank piece of paper on the table, wrote down the detailed address and specific route, thought about it, added the contact number, and handed it over. Peter also knew that rashly agreeing would only bring unnecessary losses to both parties, so he took the note and promised, "Okay, I will give you an answer as soon as possible." Seeing Peter's disappearing figure, Superkiller turned around and said, "Father, my cooperation is not bad. I guess that Rookie will agree to this transaction in all likelihood. But is it really necessary? He's just a rookie. Even if he can do it, what if he doesn't want to help after he finishes training?" The Big Daddy replied with a smile. "Don't worry, Mingdi. The investigations these days are not useless. It is true that he is a rookie, but guess when he got this ability?" Without waiting for Superkiller's answer, she explained directly. "It was more than half a month ago, from which we can see how high his potential is, and with this ability, he didn't do anything like steal, but you can also see his character when he comes out to fight criminals. What's more, the training course is made by me, and it can end anytime, anywhere. If he doesn't fulfill his promise, he can just teach him a little bit." Superkiller also fully understood at this time, and said a little excitedly, "Then I will also participate, and I want to be an instructor." The Big Daddy nodded in agreement, and said, "Then you have to get ready, it will probably start soon." After bidding farewell to Big Daddy and Superkiller, Peter returned home thinking about the deal proposed by Big Daddy from many aspects. Generally speaking, accepting Big Daddy's training is more than harmful. After all, Big Daddy can even train a little girl like Superkiller to become a top killer, so he must have a unique skill in how to control his own power. And as the Big Daddy of a retired policeman, he must have a whole set of methods to identify and find criminals. If he can master it, it will greatly improve the efficiency of completing tasks. In addition, there is another point. Peter lacks actual combat experience. Ordinary criminals can still be overwhelmed by physical fitness. Therefore, it is imperative to improve actual combat experience, leaving it to the national football team. No, it is because there is not much time left for myself. As for joining the Big Daddy's revenge plan, Peter was willing to take a gamble on it as a test for himself. If even a drug lord can't get over it, then stay at home honestly and wait for the redemption from superheroes in the days to come. The next morning, Peter got in touch with Big Daddy, told about his identity and ability, and expressed his willingness to help Big Daddy complete his revenge, hoping to improve his strength as soon as possible under the training of Big Daddy. Since both sides have demands from each other, there is a foundation of mutual trust, and the cooperation is progressing very smoothly. On the training plan, Peter can only say, Ginger is still old and spicy. Big Daddy can see the core of his ability at a glance. Spider Sense specially found someone to customize the facial mask, so that Peter could only use the spider sensor during the training days as much as possible. As for fighting, Big Daddy believes that the basics are enough. What is lacking is experience. What needs to be strengthened is the fighting rhythm and other aspects. The first few days of training were simply a nightmare for Peter, and it was a nightmare from which he could not wake up. What is even more sad is that this nightmare was opened by himself. At the same time, because this is a crash training, the actual fighting class every day is upgraded to hell level. When I return home every night, my whole body is covered in blue and purple, and almost no part is intact. During this period, Peter thought of giving up more than once in his mind. Isn't it good to lie down at home? Is it because the Coke is not good? Or is the new drama not good? Do you have to come and suffer like this? But when he thought of all the major events that were about to happen in the future, he gritted his teeth and persisted, because he didn't want to see that when a disaster happened around him, he was powerless. With this belief, Peter gradually adapted to this hellish training, and at the same time, the ability of Phoenix Fruit was also greatly developed. The body's recovery ability is about 10 times higher than that of ordinary people. Even if the nose and face were bruised and swollen the day before, it can recover the next day. But everything has two sides. After Big Daddy realized this, he strengthened his training once again, based on one principle: as long as he can't be beaten to death, he will be beaten to death. Little Lori Mindy quickly went from bare hands to rubber sticks, then to rubber bullets, and finally went straight to the battle with real knives. As the saying goes, if you want to learn to beat people, you must first learn to be beaten. After 3 days, Peter could use the spider sense to counterattack in the dark, and after 2 weeks, he was able to fight back and forth with little Lolita Mindy. Generally speaking, Peter is out of the rookie level in actual combat. He knows the weak parts of the human body and how to use the least amount of strength to achieve the greatest effect. At the same time, due to the rapid progress, Big Daddy suggested that Peter join them in their outings to increase mutual understanding in combat and prepare for the subsequent revenge. He naturally agreed. After all, the novice task has been stagnant for a while. I believe that with the help of Big Daddy and Superkiller, the task will be completed soon. Not only that, but at the moment before departure, the system also jumped out again. Congratulations to the host. Open the sign. The heroic event sets sail. Before this event is resolved, the obtained task rewards can trigger superimposed or doubled effects. Mindy, how do you usually find criminals? What am I going to do next? How many people do you think there are? Talkative Peter went online, and a series of questions were thrown at Mindy. Mindy, who was sitting by the side, couldn't help rolling his eyes. Knowing the novice's situation, he laughed and teased. Peter, you must be nervous. Don't worry, you have me as the big sister, and the action will definitely end perfectly. Peter, adjust your breathing and keep calm. Today's action is very easy, just follow my instructions. Big Daddy's calm voice came from the headset. I have received information that there will be a drug deal here today. Around 10 to 20 people. Big Daddy began to assign tasks to the two. After you enter the factory, you will occupy the corner seats. I will set up a sniper rifle on a high place to cover you. Peter, is your first time to act this time. Be calm and use good for you. Mindy replied while arranging the equipment. Dad, don't worry, the equipment is complete, Peter will follow me. Peter took a deep breath and followed Mindy into the factory. The first thing that catches the eye is all kinds of rusty machines, which are placed in a mess. It looks like an assembly line production factory, but now it has become a paradise for mice. Squeak, squeak, squeak. A few fat big mice jumped out of Peter's eyes and yelled at him a few times, as if to warn him, big man, get out of our territory. Now Peter is not in the mood to take care of them. After burying the traps in every corner with Mindy, he rushed to the designated location to hide. How is the trap arrangement? Has it reached the designated location? Please reply. Everything is perfect. Dad, what's your view over there? Do you need to change positions? Mindy replied while pressing the headset. No problem, the visibility is good. When I turn off all the lights in the factory, that's when the action begins. Facing Peter's direction, Mindy waved his hands as a gesture of waiting, and the factory slowly fell into silence, so quiet that Peter could clearly hear his slightly excited heartbeat. Suddenly a voice came from the gate of the factory, and the body tensed up instantly. Vehicles drove into the factory one after another, and the people on the vehicle got off and the two sides formed a confrontation. The scene was very tense for a while. Peter quietly raised his head and took a look. With the help of the light from the vehicle, he saw everyone in the confrontation clearly, and reported. There are 22 people on both sides, all armed with firearms, and most of them are pistols. Bang. 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 Big Daddy pulled the trigger continuously, and the factory began to plunge into darkness. The two parties in the transaction who heard the gunfire suddenly became chaotic, scolding each other while looking for cover to avoid bullets. The animal traps arranged before made a great contribution, and the person caught in the trap screamed in pain. Ah, there is a trap, the boss wants to cheat. As a result, the two sides who were already suspicious immediately drew their guns and shot each other. Seeing the timing, Peter threw out 5 smoke bombs, covering the factory in all directions with smoke and blocking the enemy's vision. During the melee, Peter moved forward quickly, using spider silk to bind the hands and feet of the enemy, Mindy followed closely behind to complete the knife, and the Big Daddy used the sniper rifle to keep an eye on the periphery of the smoke to prevent anyone from escaping in the chaos. First, the second, the third, 3 minutes later, the two drug trading gangs had been wiped out, leaving only the fallen corpses and bullet casings everywhere in the factory. In fact, no more than 10 were actually killed by Mindy, and the rest almost lost their lives in the chaotic gun battle. Peter was surprised that the whole process went smoothly. The Big Daddy put away the sniper rifle, and said, "Mindy, clean up the scene, recover the equipment, and prepare to evacuate at any time. I will drive over to pick you up. Don't be dazed anymore, Peter, hurry up and help, we have to leave as soon as possible," Mindy said in a childish voice. Coming. In the next half-month, Peter, Big Daddy, and Superkiller were frequently dispatched to attack criminals in the city. As the number of joint operations continued to increase, the cooperation between the three became more and more powerful the more tacit understanding. This half-month experience made Peter feel like a new student. He had a new understanding of this bustling big city, and also realized what it means to never be satisfied with the human heart. At the same time, Big Daddy noticed that there might be a problem with Peter's mental state, so in order to prevent accidents, he decided to suspend his outings. Therefore today Peter did not get up early in the morning and rush to the training place as usual. Instead, he lay lazily on the bed, enjoying the first ray of sunshine in the morning, enjoying this rare leisure time. For this kind of life, Peter sincerely hopes that the time at this moment can be suspended, and there is no need to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning, and there is no need to memorize complicated psychological books by rote. Summary in one sentence: really fragrant. Stretching his waist, Peter remembered that there was still one major thing he hadn't done. The daily task had been completed, and the reward was waiting for him to unlock it. The host has completed the daily tasks, the rewards have been placed in the warehouse, the virtual training room module is being loaded. Is there a lottery for D-level items? Congratulations to the host for successfully triggering the doubling effect of the hero event, and the reward will be doubled by 3 levels. It's a pity that before he finished tasting the joy, Peter's head couldn't help but ache when he saw the 4 prominent characters on the roulette. Thank you for your patronage. I got up and got out of bed and went to the bathroom to tidy myself up and wash my hands back and forth 3 times. I began to meditate in my heart. When we meet on a narrow road, the brave wins. After a whole set of procedures, he felt that luck has been added to him, and today he will be the man who will be crowned king. Peter looked at the roulette wheel in front of him, and shouted loudly, "Today, I, Peter Parker, will be possessed by the European Emperor, and the non-chieftains will retreat quickly. Let me drive it." Congratulations to the host for obtaining the invisible body armor, Thorn Halo version. Double success. 3 sets of invisible body armor have been put into the warehouse, please check in time. Invisible body armor, Thorn Halo version, covers all parts of the human body in all aspects, absorbs kinetic energy to complete a certain counterattack when attacked, can be attacked continuously for 5 minutes, and can be used by others. This function is very good, especially because it can be used by others, so that the safety of Uncle Ben and Aunt May is guaranteed at the minimum. After putting away the body armor, Peter opened another reward, the virtual training room. By connecting the host's nerves, the host is brought into the virtual space, where he can choose opponents to fight. The opponent's abilities match the host's. This virtual training room can be regarded as a solution to Peter's urgent needs. Recently, he has entered a bottleneck state in actual combat. Although he had fought many criminals in the past half-month, these people did not bring enough pressure. Nowadays, if you want to go further in actual combat, you must compete with real masters, preferably at the level of a life and death showdown, and the virtual training room just meets the conditions. Immediately, Peter clicked to activate, only to feel a blur in front of his eyes, and he had come to an empty street, and there was nothing on the entire street. Host, please follow the prompts to proceed to the next step. Under the prompt of the system, follow the instructions step by step. After some research, Peter was full of black lines. It turned out that the targets of the battle were not randomly generated, but Peter paid a certain amount of reputation to choose to buy. There were expensive and cheap ones. In short, the more realistic it is, the more expensive it is. At the same time, the battle environment can also be purchased. You can choose any terrain and change it with one click. Since the host is using the virtual training room for the first time, the system will give the host a D-level opponent, which can be used for free for 3 days. Peter just wants to talk about the familiar routine, which is exactly the same as the Krypton Gold game of the Big Penguin. First, you can use it for free to get you hooked. In fact, the butcher knife hidden behind the back has been sharpened and is ready to chop at any time. However, he also understands the truth of drinking today and getting drunk today, and he has nothing to fear about it, just let the horse come over. After careful analysis of one's own abilities, one finds that the spider sense and primary self-healing body both require a lot of targeted training. Enter many requirements such as rich combat experience and restraint of spider induction on the screen, and faces such as Wolverine and Deadpool appear in the selection area. In the end, Peter chose Wolverine. After all, the power of Deadpool's mouth cannon is not something ordinary people can bear, so it's better not to ask for trouble. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. As the system counts down, Wolverine gradually materializes, and Peter wants to say hello. Unexpectedly, after the newly formed Wolverine opened his eyes, his first move was to rush over. Steel claws instantly grew from the cracks in his knuckles, and his whole body exuded a tragic aura, as if a knight was launching the last charge in his life. So fast. This was Peter's only thought at this time. Although the spider sensor was constantly sending out danger signals to him, his body seemed to be frightened by Wolverine's aura, and he couldn't move. It wasn't until the steel claws pierced the skin and caused pain that Peter managed to escape with the help of the pain, avoiding the end of being pierced by Wolverine's claws. I'm going. This is too strong. Sure enough, there are no good products for free, and you are a scam in the system, and this is D-level. Peter scolded the system in pain. After a failed blow, Wolverine quickly adjusted his pace, and his claws struck Peter's chest again. This time Peter pulled himself together, decisively shot spider webs to wrap around Wolverine's hands, and punched Wolverine's nose. Unexpectedly, Wolverine didn't dodge anything, and resisted the punch abruptly. His claws instantly tore the spider web, and the steel claws continued to swing towards Peter's chest. Peter could no longer dodge, so he could only block the blow with his body, and his chest was directly cut open with 3 deep wounds with bone visible. In order to avoid the next wave of attacks, Peter quickly backed away and adjusted his breathing, but the pain in his chest came like a tide, which seemed to break through his body's endurance, and he couldn't help but scream, wanting to relieve himself. This burst of pain. Wolverine was in power and relentless. He noticed that Peter was distracted, and immediately rushed to Peter's side with a stride. With his hands down, his left hand mercilessly scratched across Peter's neck, and his right hand successfully completed the heart-piercing movement. Before he could react at all, Peter's head was chopped off by the steel claws, and his head kept spinning in midair. He saw himself turned into a headless corpse, with blood spurting from his neck like a spring, instantly staining the ground red, and he also saw his own heart, jumping continuously in Wolverine's right hand, still alive look. I don't know how many times I turned my head and finally fell to the ground, and then I didn't know anything after my eyes went dark. Ah! Peter jumped up from the bed immediately, looked around and found that he was still at home, subconsciously touched his neck and heart. Fortunately, they were still. It took him a long time to regain his composure. He could only say that this death was too real. At that moment, he really thought that he had died. Sure enough, all the free ones are poisonous. I'm too greedy, and you must be messing with my mentality in the system. How could the Wolverine just now belong to the D-class? Please calm down, the host. Wolverine's strength has been suppressed to D-level, but even the system didn't expect such an ending. Maybe the system's detection function really needs to be reloaded. I'll go. I don't believe what you bastard is implying in the system. After I rest for a while, I will fight Wolverine until dawn. Peter replied extremely frantically. 3 days later in the morning, Peter came to the safe house with a yawn, and said to Mindy, who was stretching, "Good morning." Seeing Peter's sleepy look, Mindy joked. "Morning, Peter. How long have you been playing these 3 days, and the dark circles under your eyes are so heavy, it must be that you did something bad at night." "That's not the case at all. Mindy, you've really grown up and become more and more sensible. You even understand these things so well." Peter stretched out his evil hands to pinch Mindy's face and countered. Mindy was naturally not to be outdone, and responded to Peter in the same way. Both sides stared at each other, neither of them willing to be the first to let go. In the end, Peter let go of his hands helplessly, mainly because he was too tired. For the past 3 days, he has been staying in the virtual training room, fighting with Wolverine until dawn, without wasting any time. However, the number of death experiences has also seriously exceeded the standard. Even the super resilience can't withstand such a waste, and naturally falls into a state of excessive fatigue mentally. Although the final result was a non-victorious game, it was not without gains. The current body's self-healing speed and the use of spider induction have made a qualitative leap. After 3 days of death experience, Peter can be very confident, and now he has been reborn. he can hit 100. At this moment, Big Daddy came to the living room and said, "Peter, Mindy, you two stop playing, come and help sort out the materials." Big Daddy moved out box after box of materials from the room, and explained to the two that this was the result of his investigation since he was released from prison. Over the years, while training Mindy, he collected information about drug lord Frank Amick through his own contacts. After so many years, he collected the photos and pages of paper in this box bit by bit. The information roughly outlines Frank Amick's drug trafficking network. Big Daddy's original plan was to eradicate all the people on the information, so that Frank Amick could taste the taste of losing everything. It's just that with the deepening of the investigation, the Big Daddy found that it is almost impossible to achieve the goal with only the father and daughter. He also discovered that the occurrence of these crimes seems to be accidental but has a great correlation, and there is a more powerful behind-the-scenes hidden behind it, which has integrated the crimes to form a complete industrial chain. In fact, there was another reason that made Big Daddy give up his original goal. In fact, the revenge had begun a year ago, and the initial progress was perfect. One after another, the drug dealers were killed by the father and daughter. It's a pity that the good times don't last long. The enemy quickly sensed that something was wrong, set up multiple traps and bought high-level figures, and launched a joint operation with the police to arrest Big Daddy and Mindy. Although the result was that he escaped in time, but because of this, the Big Daddy spent half a year at home to recuperate before he managed to recover. During his recuperation period, he also figured it out. The previous goal of revenge was too whimsical. He decided to kill the big drug lord Frank Amick first, and then slowly solve the relationship network behind the big drug lord. "Peter, this is the current situation. I don't want to deceive you. Judging from the information obtained so far, this operation has a huge risk. You still have family members. You should seriously consider whether to join, but whatever you choose, we all comrades who fight together." Big Daddy expressed his thoughts to Peter with the information. Mindy, who was sitting by the side, had a troubled expression on his face. He wanted to say something but didn't say it in the end, and just looked at Peter quietly. "Uncle Damon, don't worry, you have helped me so much, I will definitely do my best to help you." "Mindy, don't look at me like this, do you already worship me?" Peter put his hand on Mindy's head up, rubbing Mindy's hair like a dog's head. It wasn't until Peter stepped aside that Mindy came to his senses, and quickly rushed forward. "Bastard, when did you become so narcissistic and dare to mess with my hair? I will definitely break your dog legs." At this time Peter also heard a mechanical sound from the system. The host got the task. Big Daddy's Road to Revenge. Complete within 24 hours and there will be surprises. Big Daddy's Way of Revenge. Big Daddy Damon's 10-year-old resentment will finally explode today, helping Big Daddy Damon successfully kill the big drug lord Frank Amick. Task Reward. Ability Draw Once. The host completion time is used as the distribution standard. After a long time of hard work by the three of them, they finally sorted out the boxes of relevant materials and drew a huge relationship diagram on the wall. The length and width are 3 meters, and the photos and the names of the people are connected in series with red lines, and the introductions of the people in the photos and the relationship between them are written beside the red lines. In this relationship map, there are not only various gang members, but also officials from various departments in New York City, internal personnel of the police department, management personnel in the docks, and so on. Looking at the various complex relationships on the relationship diagram, Peter's 3 views are completely ruined, and he can only say that the charm of money is really infinite. The drug cartel headed by the big drug lord Frank Amick uses money to clear the way, laying bait in the city, quietly waiting for the greedy fish to take the bait. Once they take the bait, they will treat the drug trafficking network spontaneously from top to bottom, from the inside out, as if they were their own family members, and continue to provide convenience for the drug trafficking group. In the end, these people are like fish in the whirlpool. Even if they want to turn back, they can no longer leave, and they have completely become part of this drug cartel. Peter can fully imagine how many people will be crazy about it if the Big Daddy's previous plan is used to completely destroy this relationship network. Cutting off people's wealth is like killing their parents. At that time, not only the drug lords will be desperate, but even the city's officials will dispatch police forces to arrest them all over the city. Big Daddy fell into contemplation of this relationship diagram, and seemed to be sighing in his heart, but he didn't say anything in the end. Turning around, he took out a brand new document, spread it on the desk and said, "Recently, Frank Amick's drug cartel has suffered heavy losses. In order to maintain the situation, he desperately dispatched the experts around him, and his protection is constantly increasing. Decline." A meeting will be held tonight in the no-nonsense zone in Hell's Kitchen in an attempt to save the group that is about to collapse, and there are also people who want to attack them tonight. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, and we must not miss this opportunity. As night fell, after dinner, Big Daddy came to the wall on the other side, tapping on the wall flexibly as if opening a secret chamber mechanism. After a while, the entrance appeared. Big Daddy waved his hand to signal to follow. After entering, Peter found that this was another world. At this moment, he finally understood where Big Daddy's money was spent, and all of it was used to buy weapons. All kinds of firearms and ammunition in the room are piled up like mountains, including pistols, shotguns, microchargers, sniper rifles, grenades, etc. Even Mindy was very surprised when he saw this scene, and asked, "Father, have you returned from robbing any military base? This number is too exaggerated." Big Daddy picked up the weapon in front of him, and replied, "This is the harvest of the past few years, choose what you need, and we are ready to go." When Peter walked out of the living room, Big Daddy was already fully armed, with a sniper rifle on his back, a rifle on his chest, 2 pistols in holsters on both sides of his hips, and a grenade on his waist. From top to bottom, every part of the body is equipped with weapons, almost armed to the teeth. The whole person is like a humanoid arsenal. It's late at night, and the noisy streets have gradually fallen into calm. According to the collected information, Big Daddy drove through the streets and alleys, and entered the no-nonsense zone of Hell's Kitchen. Peter recalled the information in the afternoon. This area should be the origin of Hell's Kitchen. When it was developed decades ago, in order to obtain more benefits, real estate developers chose to mobilize gangsters in the face of nail households. After a battle of wits and courage, the nail households could not live normally and gradually moved out. Later, the real estate developer also had an accident and was unable to carry out development. Both parties suffered losses. A large number of unfinished buildings and uninhabited apartments have become the characteristics of this area, and have become the first choice for stowaways, homeless and criminals. When there are too many people, there will naturally be conflicts of interest, and gangster forces will also form from this. Later, more and more people join in, and this trend spreads outward like a virus that cannot be stopped. The notorious district of Hell's Kitchen was born in one of the most prosperous districts of the city, which is unbearably laughable and utterly ridiculous. And because some people did not allow order in the original place of origin, this area has been completely reduced to a no-regret zone for a long time. Although the time is already approaching the early morning, the nightlife in this area has just begun. The streets are bustling with people racing crazily, drunks who have passed out, and gangsters who have been wandering around. The Big Daddy stopped the car in the alley, took out the map and said, "Every vehicle passing through this area will definitely pass through the north and south intersections. Here, Mindy and I are watching. Peter, you go to a high place to observe the Southern Cross Road. Please let me know if there is any situation." Clear. Peter finished dressing the moment he opened the car door, and chose an abandoned apartment. A strand of spider silk slipped from his wrist, stuck to the wall and jumped to the roof. First car, no second car, no third car, no. At this time, an RV drove past from the south, which caught Peter's attention. The characteristics of the car were very consistent with the information marked, so he quickly got in touch with Big Daddy. When the Big Daddy heard the news, he immediately picked up the binoculars to take a closer look, and said, "That's right, it's this one, Peter, we have to keep up." "Got it. I'm going down now." The three of them followed the RV to a car repair factory, stopped and turned off the engine again and entered the observation period again. Within half an hour, cars drove into the factory one after another. The Big Daddy carefully observed every car that entered, and said, "They are all the main members of the drug cartel." It seems that he is already in a hurry. Tomorrow the entire drug market will have to be cleaned up again. Mindy rolled his eyes, and directly retorted, "There are at least 100 people in Dad, we have to take it step by step. The target for tonight is only one person, and the rest will be left alone." Big Daddy knew that his daughter cared about his thoughts, turned around and said, "Peter, let's split up. You go in first to occupy a favorable position, and Mindy and I wait for the other group to enter. Everything is about safety." Peter swiped strands of spider silk to a high place like a swing, and successfully entered the factory with the help of the patrols of the peripheral personnel. It's just that the area of this factory is several times larger than predicted, and the distribution of the factory buildings is very chaotic, with one building in the east and one in the west, with no rules at all. For a while, he couldn't find the right direction at all. Considering the time factor, he quickly found a high place without hesitation and asked Big Daddy for help. "Uncle Damon, can you hear me? I received. The signal is a little unstable. There should be a signal jammer around here." What's the situation with you, Peter? Big Daddy's intermittent voice came. Peter told Big Daddy in detail about the environment inside the factory and the difficulties encountered at this time. Big Daddy looked at the vehicles at the entrance and suggested, Peter, there are 3 more cars driving in at the gate. Maybe you can follow them to find the meeting place. I'm also ready to leave here. He followed the advice and rushed back to the entrance. After a while, 3 small RVs slowly drove in from the entrance. In order to avoid the cameras and some patrolling personnel, Peter could only choose a remote corner and follow the RV far away. Fortunately, RVs aren't very fast. I saw the RV going around in the factory. At first, Peter, who followed behind, thought he had been discovered, but it turned out that it was just a false alarm. At a corner, the caravan disappeared in front of his eyes. Peter hurriedly got up and looked around, and found that it was a visual difference effect. In front of the iron gate, there were 2 guards, fully armed, standing on both sides of the iron gate. After observing their positions, Peter decided to act first. After all, if he didn't move, the caravan would go far away, and it would be difficult to find its way again. Aiming at the guard's neck, he turned his hands over, and the white spider silk was hit like a rubber bullet, and the 2 fell to the ground instantly. Peter immediately rushed over and punched everyone a few times to make sure they were really unconscious. At the same time, in order to prevent them from yelling for help after waking up, strands of spider silk were swept out again to tie up their hands and feet. As for the mouths, of course, they had to wrap them 7 or 8 times. Even if the guards were dealt with as quickly as possible, when the RV was caught up again, the passengers in the car had long since disappeared. At first, I thought that the meeting place might be nearby, but unfortunately, I was at a loss. After turning around, I still didn't find anything. But fortunately, there is no such thing as an unparalleled road. At this time, there was a loud sound from a distance. Peter embraced the mentality of treating a dead horse as a living horse doctor, and listened to the sound in the distance, and constantly adjusted the direction of progress. Came to an old factory building. The first feeling of the factory building is that it has experienced the vicissitudes of life, and the crumbling bricks on the roof are the best proof. Here, Peter didn't dare to throw the spider silk directly, so he could only use the hook in his palm to climb up the wall carefully and slowly, and found a good observation position on a high place. The factory building was already brightly lit, and all the people sitting on the seats were wearing suits and ties. They looked like business elites. At first glance, no one would suspect that this place would be a den of drug dealers. If Peter didn't know the details of each of them clearly, he really thought he had gone to the wrong place and broke into a business meeting. Everyone present here has directly or indirectly had thousands of lives in their hands. From a legal perspective, they are even more sinful. They are a group of existences that should be pulled out and shot for 10 minutes. Such a group of people are having a heated conversation around the table. You and I are extremely lively. No one is willing to bow down. They are all looking at each other with ill intentions. The whole factory is as noisy as a vegetable market. In the dialogue of competing for interests, the anger in everyone's heart is constantly rising, and the scene is gradually getting out of control. Some people can't hold back anymore, and their weapons have been drawn out to prepare for a big fight here. And the target of Peter's mission, the convener of tonight's meeting, the big drug lord Frank Amick, was sitting aside drinking red wine and smoking a cigar, quietly watching this boring and ridiculous farce. But when Frank Amick saw someone taking out a weapon, he knew it was time for him to stand up and stop it. Otherwise, this place would become a scene of a new round of fighting, which was extremely detrimental to the next plan. He stretched his waist and put down the red wine and cigar in his hand, got up and took out the pistol from his arms and fired 3 shots in the air, issuing a warning as the protagonist. Bang, bang, bang. After hearing the gunshots, the factory building became even more chaotic. The younger brothers standing behind the boss took out their weapons and aimed at each other, as if bows and arrows had been wounded and were about to go off, waiting for an order from their boss to send each other to see God. Looking at the chaotic scene, Frank Amick couldn't help rolling his eyes, and sarcastically said, "Shut up, you bastards, calm down for me. I invited you here, I didn't want you to stage a big shootout hereof." The violent drug dealer Garcia from Mexico couldn't bear such irony, and immediately turned back, shouting, "What are you pretending to be? I'm not scared, don't think that we are here today, you think you are the boss, really shameless guy." When Frank Amick heard it, he realized that if he didn't show some real skills, these idiots really thought they were dead, and they would never be quiet. Frank Amick looked at the crowd indifferently, and waved to the side. Chris the Red Whirlwind stood up as if receiving a signal, and said excitedly, "Leave it to me, I promise you won't be disappointed, father." Turning around and waving his arms towards the factory building, Red hurricanes appeared one after another under the control of his thoughts. Under this power beyond science, many drug dealers were directly blown into the air to experience a free fall. Frank Amick looked at the fallen people and said viciously, "Can you calm down now? If you haven't calmed down yet, I don't mind sending him a free ride to see God." Although some drug dealers are still dissatisfied in their hearts, seeing the stunned Red Whirlwind Chris beside him, of course they are good guys who don't suffer from immediate losses. They are old and cunning, and they all know that young people of 17 or 18 do not have profit-oriented views in their minds. After some eye contact, the drug dealers quickly reached an agreement. Isn't it just a shame? Later just let their family bleed more. The Red Whirlwind Chris naturally didn't want to end it so quickly, and taunted loudly. "A group of cowards, Mexicans, weren't you loud just now? Don't be cowardly, just keep talking." Garcia, who was named, got up and patted the dust on his body, raised his eyebrows and said in a strange tone, "It's just a misunderstanding, my good nephew, you don't need to be so angry, we have to calm down, everyone." "It must be, nephew, calm down, don't be so impulsive, ha ha ha." Although the drug dealers didn't want to be troublesome, they naturally wouldn't let go of this kind of pie that had been delivered to their mouths, and responded one after another. Although the anger in Red Whirlwind Chris's heart continued to soar, he still retained some semblance of reason and knew that he could not spoil his father's plan. He stared at Garcia with a murderous face and made a death warning gesture. Frank Amick patted his son on the shoulder as a sign of comfort, and continued, "During this time, that fat man Jin Bing has been aggressive, at least half of our market has been swallowed up, and he has been giving money to others. Let me ask you, are you willing?" From Frank Amick's perspective, the looks of many drug dealers are different, and he can fully speculate that some of them must be playing dumb, and they have placed bets on two sides and are ready to take it all. Frank Amick couldn't help feeling a headache. It was his misfortune to have this group of partners, all of them stupid as pigs, seeing only the meager benefits in front of them. No one can help in such a crisis, but it's not the fault of others, it's all his own choice. Those cunning partners have undoubtedly been cleaned up by him long ago. Frank Amick thought. These idiots can't be counted on. Fortunately, his backup plan was prepared in time, and it's time to make the right choice. Because the signal was always on and off, Peter watched the big show on the roof for more than 10 minutes before getting in touch with Big Daddy. "Uncle Damon, I found Frank Amick. My current location is probably in the southernmost building of the factory." "Okay, Peter. I also found that another group of people started to fight. It is estimated that a fight will start soon. You have to pay attention to your safety and don't be discovered. We will be there soon." Big Daddy was a little excited. The sound came from the earphone. After receiving the news, Peter of course stayed quietly where he was, and watched the drug dealers in the factory discuss countermeasures. Tonight was an eye-opener. In a situation that seems to be united, in fact everyone has an ulterior motive and wants to gain more benefits, and even wants to swallow each other in one bite. The discussion in the whole meeting is actually no different from that of a shrew cursing. But Frank Amick, who shocked the audience just now, fell into a dead state, didn't say a word, just sat quietly and listened, as if waiting for something to come. Just as Peter was carefully observing Frank Amick's micro-expression, the light bulbs in the factory began to dim one after another. This sudden darkness surprised many drug dealers in the factory, and the scene became quiet again. The drug dealers pulled out their weapons one after another. Although they were in the dark, none of them took out their mobile phones as lighting tools. At the same time, the bosses also looked at the quiet Frank Amick with suspicious eyes, as if saying that if there is no reasonable explanation, this place will be a battlefield. Even if God Jesus comes, it will not work. Frank Amick was not affected at all, and said calmly, "There should be a problem with the factory's circuit, and I'll ask someone to go out to see what's going on." Before the words were finished, gunshots and screams began to come in from outside. After a loud noise, the gate of the factory building was blasted open, and the iron gate weighing several hundred kilograms was lifted into the sky. Immediately afterwards, a series of classic packages such as grenades and shock bombs were thrown in from the outside like a goddess, covering the entire factory building in all directions, without letting go of any dead corner. The drug dealers are also experienced, and they quickly searched for cover in the first time, but they were in the dark, and everyone's sight was greatly restricted. Only half of the people were safe and sound in this rain of death. The rest were lucky enough to be blown out temporarily, and those who were unlucky had already won the qualification to meet God. And in less than 30 seconds after the explosion, a group of about 50 gang members in full armor rushed into the factory building, wearing black combat uniforms and armed with assault rifles, and fired back and forth at the factory building. Its level of professionalism is no less than that of professional soldiers, making people have to think deeply about where the power behind it comes from. Frank Amick obviously knew the attack was coming. He came to the mechanical equipment ahead of time to resist the attack, and shouted, "Chris, use your ability to force them outside. If you a bunch of useless people want to live, just give Lao Su a hard hit back." The red hurricane once again appeared overwhelmingly, and the powerful wind instantly tore apart the orderly offensive formation of the gang members. Under the hurricane-like counterattack, the drug dealers gradually came out of the enemy's fire suppression, and the bosses even issued the strongest bounty. "Rush out for me. Kill one and I'll reward you with 100 million yuan, and the leader will give you 1,000 million yuan directly, and I will cover the rest of your life." The charm of money is the most moving, and it also stirs people's hearts the most. The happiness of the rest of your life depends on this moment. The younger brothers rushed out enthusiastically, using their lives to pave the way for the next counterattack. At this time, the number advantage of the drug dealers began to show. Under the raging hurricane and life-for-life tactics, the incoming gang members gradually couldn't suppress the drug dealers' attack. Casualties began to occur, and they were forced to leave the factory soon. The drug dealers could not help cheering in high spirits. Just when they thought that the dawn of victory was just around the corner, the other parties seemed to have predicted the occurrence of this situation and made preparations in advance. A giant man stood up and shouted, "Little ones, get out of the way." He tore off the black combat uniform, and his strong upper body was only wearing a tight vest, exposing his rock-like hand muscles. He raised the RPG in his hand, and said with a wild smile, "Haha, boy, try the great gift that the uncle carefully prepared for you. Come, give the uncle a smile." Looking at the oncoming rockets, Chris the Red Whirlwind didn't dare to be careless at all. While keeping the distance back, he controlled the hurricane to throw the rockets back. Bang! 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 Under the cover of the rocket explosion, the gang members attacked again. This time, it was unknown whether it was purely a mistake, or the drug dealers deliberately gave way. The brawny man has unknowingly come to the Red Whirlwind Chris. He raised the RPG again and said with a smile, "It's pretty powerful, kid. Let's do it 3 more times." At this time, Chris the Red Whirlwind was sweating profusely, and his condition had not yet recovered. He just wanted to taunt and improve his momentum. "You only have this ability, weak chicken." He didn't expect that a new round of attacks had already started, and the rockets that were less than 20 meters away instantly came to him, and he felt a strong breath of death. "Ah, move for me." This time, even the strength of breastfeeding was used. The veins in the neck burst out, the facial features began to bleed, and the blood covered the cheeks. At the last moment, he successfully threw the rocket upwards, but the manpower is limited after all, so the Red Whirlwind Chris completely lost his strength, fell to the ground and passed out. There was a loud noise and a strong explosion opened a skylight on the ceiling of the factory building. It will be convenient to look up at the starry sky in the factory building in the future, and there is no need to go outdoors at all. Peter, who was on a high place, quickly changed his position, and felt the whine of the factory building. It was about to be unable to bear the pain, and it was going to lie down. Before the drug dealers have finished the feeling of escaping from the dead, the bullets of the gang members came again, and without the suppression of the hurricane, even the most brutal life-for-life tactics could no longer sustain it. At this moment, the temptation of money gradually receded in the mind. Even higher and more money could not stop human beings from fear of death. The combat effectiveness of drug dealers declined step by step. The gang members also immediately started chanting slogans such as "handing in your guns and not killing, surrendering and not dying," which dealt a fatal blow to the drug dealers whose morale had dropped. They began to put down the weapons in their hands hesitantly, squatted down and put their hands on their heads, longing for a chance to live. The counterattack formation of the drug dealers completely collapsed. No one can effectively stop the attack, and the gangsters did not miss this opportunity, broke into the factory building with such force, and quickly controlled the situation. A few minutes ago, the factory building was relatively lively and crowded, but now it is full of corpses, with a few unlucky people piled up in every corner, and there are stumps and broken arms everywhere on the ground. There was a sinister smile on the corner of the strong man's mouth. He moved his wrist and walked over, instructing the members to restore the lights and gather the surviving drug dealers at the table. He opened the mouth and said, "Everyone, let me introduce myself. My name is Bear Bear. You can call me by my code name, and you can also call me Bell. I am very honored to participate in your meeting today. I came here today mainly to discuss one thing with you and invite you to join our big family." Garcia, who had escaped from the catastrophe, immediately became happy when he heard this, because he was the one who was trying to have both. He had just discussed with Jin Bin a few days ago so he said that this would be a good opportunity to show his power, and if he made good use of it, he might be able to win the market in a few more districts. In order not to be robbed of the opportunity, Garcia directly stepped forward and cursed in the most angry tone. "Damn. Where did the wild dog come from? You are not qualified to talk to us. Your boss Jin doesn't even dare to do this talk to us." The other drug dealers of the same nature saw the behavior of the old coward Garcia, and instantly understood his intentions, secretly regretting that it was not themselves. However, some people acted as the first brave men and took the lead to test Jin Bing's bottom line. Of course, they followed up to help him and cursed one after another. After Bell saw this scene, he pulled out his pistol without saying a word, shot Garcia's leg, and roared fiercely, "You guys are really shameless. I don't think you have figured out the situation now." The noisy factory fell silent in an instant, and the only movement was Garcia holding his legs and screaming. But no matter how severe the pain was, he couldn't hide the surprise on his face. How could this happen? The story didn't develop like this. He really wanted to scold Bell. "Did you not take the script?" Bell waved his hand to drag Garcia away, and continued, "Are you sober now? There is only one way for you to go now, and that is to join us. What's more, after tonight, the entire drug market in New York is waiting for us. But it's all money that fell on the ground, don't you all want it?" Then broke the news. "Do you know why we can be so clear about your every move? Of course, Frank Amick has already joined us. Time is running out, so you make a decision quickly. You can trust the words of an enemy. If you think about it with your brains, it's simply impossible." Frank Amick explained under the suspicious eyes of many drug dealers, while looking at Bell gloomily from the corner of his eye. He knew that all his plans tonight were all in vain. His whole card, the Red Whirlwind Chris, failed to suppress Jin Bing's men, which led to the current situation being so passive. Otherwise, the entire drug market would be his own after tonight. When Peter talked about the situation at this time, Big Daddy seemed very excited and said, "Peter, you are ready to change positions at any time, and you must watch Frank Amick for me. This opportunity must not be missed. Me and Superkiller is going to join you now." Naturally, he didn't object, because he also agreed that this was an excellent opportunity, and if he missed it, he would regret it for the rest of his life. Just when Peter thought the drama was about to come to an end, the development of things changed again, and this time the protagonist was himself. Suddenly Bell raised his head and smiled, raised the PRG in his hand and said viciously, "Little bug upstairs, whether this big show is exciting to watch from above, we can charge for it." At first, I thought it was just a trick, but what I didn't expect was that Bell directly fired a rocket, and the rest of the gang members immediately raised their guns and shot in this direction. "Damn it, you really found me." Peter quickly launched a spider thread to the opposite side, and jumped away from the spot, although he successfully avoided the attack. But still overestimated the capacity of the factory building. The rocket that exploded again became the last straw. The entire ceiling completely lost its support, and began to accept the invitation of gravity to embrace the earth. Bell immediately issued an order to press the drug dealers to avoid falling rocks, and Peter was also in a hurry, adjusting his posture in the air and jumping a few times before arriving at the conference table. In a burst of dust, Peter looked at the gang members in front of him, and said with some embarrassment, "Hi, good evening, brothers, have you eaten yet? I'm just passing by, don't be so excited, I'm leaving now." When the gang members saw the prey in front of them, they naturally wouldn't be soft-hearted, and immediately fired countless bullets towards Peter. Peter flung out the spider's thread again and fled, jokingly said, "You're too irritable, buddy. This is not a good thing. Getting angry can easily hurt your body." Bell on the side stretched his muscles and bones, looked at the drug dealers and said, "No wonder everyone is quite calm. It turns out that there are backers. But your hopes are doomed to be shattered, so come a few people and let's fight with this little bug. Have fun, and talk about the rest with our big boss." As soon as the words fell, more than 30 gang members came out in an instant, staring at Peter above, looking ready. "As for it, with so many people here, do you think so highly of me?" Peter complained while observing the opponent's position, thinking about the two options of preemptive strike and temporary retreat. At this time, Big Daddy's voice came and made a decision on this issue. "Peter, we are here, we can fight, you stop Bear Bell, and leave the rest to me and Mindy. Is there a problem?" "No problem, the action begins." Peter flung spider webs at the overhead lights, making the factory dark again, and threw all the smoke bombs on his body to create a favorable fighting environment. When Bell saw it, he immediately pulled out his pistol and fired 3 shots into the sky, warning the drug dealers present, and said, "Calm down, don't panic at this level, and watch the people in front of you." Peter came to the gate of the factory building, and used the spider silk to stick the iron door that had been blown up before. Holding the spider silk with both hands, the iron door started to rotate as a discus. When the centrifugal force generated by the rotation of the iron door reached its highest point, Peter aimed at Belle and threw it out. The moment the iron door was thrown out, Belle in the smoke also noticed something, and rolled under the table, shouting loudly, "Something is coming, be careful to dodge." After Belle's reminder, the people behind him also immediately searched for all kinds of cover, and the iron gate swept past, and those who had no time to dodge followed the iron gate and kept rushing forward, screaming continuously. Under the cover of the iron gate, Peter flung balls of spider silk at Belle and the others, trying to limit their actions as much as possible, reducing the possibility of shooting, and creating opportunities for the Big Daddy. In the confusion, in order to obtain Belle's current position, Peter taunted loudly, "Dude, it seems that you are not as strong as you said, only a few times, is it not enough?" Belle pushed away the table on his body and jumped up, pulled out the steel knife and shouted, "Little bug, you are looking for death, and I will come to fulfill you." Boom. It was as if there was a sudden thunder on the flat ground, and Belle rushed towards Peter at an extremely fast speed. "Phew, is that right? Then let the horse come over." Peter began to adjust his breathing, concentrate his attention, and let his body enter the best state. Looking at the figure running towards him, he just gave a speech. Sure enough, a person's name may be wrong, but the nickname given by others will never be wrong. The running Belle looked like a big brown bear that had been hungry for more than a week. He rushed towards the food ferociously, and the steel knife in his hand became his sharpest claw, turning into an afterimage and attacking Peter. However, the focused Peter reacted very quickly, using his legs to lure Belle to keep retreating, so as to distance himself from the gangsters, and turned around to avoid Belle's fatal blow. At the same time, the right hand threw strands of spider silk towards Belle. The spider silk was extremely fast, turning into a net in the air and successfully wrapping Belle's head, plunging him into darkness. Naturally, Peter would not miss such a good opportunity to attack. He strode forward and hammered Belle's abdomen with both fists. Belle, who was temporarily blind, had no room to resist. He screamed with 2 punches and hugged his stomach with both hands. Peter continued to move forward. In line with the combat plan of beating the dog in the water, he expanded his own advantages and directly took Belle down. Unexpectedly, Belle's choice was to continue to fight hard, exchange the injury for a chance to adjust, and drew the pistol from his waist, and successfully pushed Peter back with the close cooperation of the full magazine and the steel knife. Belle immediately stepped back to distance himself from Peter, and while tearing off the spider silk from his face, he taunted, "If there are only these tricks, it's too disappointing, little bug." Peter knew that his mentality was a little drifting, and he underestimated Belle, but looking at his current state, the laughter was uncontrollable. Counterattacked. Really? Then what is the corner of your mouth now? Is it ketchup? And are you delaying time to wait for the person behind you? Listen to what is that sound? Belle's eyes were as wide as copper bells, staring at Peter firmly, and said angrily, "Sniper rifle, do you think you're really sure to win? Don't be too arrogant, you bug." He roared to boost the momentum of the gang members behind, and rushed towards Peter again, because he also knew that there was no way out, and he could only keep going forward. Peter went up to meet him. He wanted to make a quick decision, and the smoke behind him was about to disperse. If it didn't end soon, there would be too many factors to consider later. With a sudden step on the ground, it disappeared from Belle's sight like a bolt of lightning, aiming at Belle with both hands and continuously throwing out spider webs. Under the tide-like attack, even Belle's steel knife could not completely cut through the spider silk, and Belle's whole body was gradually covered by the spider silk. Peter began to pull the spider web with all his strength, causing Belle to lose his balance completely. Then he lunged forward and punched Belle's chin with all his strength. Belle's huge body was hit and rolled back several times. Just as he was about to step forward to make up a knife and end the battle, the gang members in the smoke were approaching, and the bullets kept whizzing past him, preventing Peter from advancing. There are less than 10 gang members approaching at present, which shows that Big Daddy is ruthless, but he also has to maximize the possibility of Big Daddy's accident. After hesitating for half a second, Peter immediately turned around and ran in the direction of Big Daddy. If he didn't leave Belle, everyone would definitely entangle him. Belle shook his head to wake himself up as much as possible, spat out the broken teeth, wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth, and tried to stand up again. He saw through Peter's intentions, endured the pain and shouted loudly, "What are you doing in a daze? Chase after him and entangle him." The gang members glanced at each other, and chased after him with some hesitation, but the speed was obviously much slower. After all, so many members had gone to see God, and it was only natural that they flinched in their hearts. On the other hand, 10 minutes ago, Big Daddy and Mindy's father-daughter combination started to go crazy, and the gang members who were about to keep up with Belle had no idea that the fatal blow appeared behind the smoke. Father, behind the pillar at 10 o'clock, at 3 o'clock. Following Mindy's constant reports, Big Daddy's death couriers were delivered one by one, without a trace of defense. They were shot one after another, and each gunshot took the life of a gang member. Intimidated by Big Daddy's sniper rifle, the remaining gang members dared not walk out of the smoke easily. Open. As time passed, Mindy, who hadn't seen anyone come out for a long time, suggested, "Father, the smoke is about to disperse, Peter's side may be under siege, let's meet up quickly." The Big Daddy nodded, and the two began to pack their equipment. At the corner of the downstairs, the Big Daddy secretly made a signal-like gesture, and Mindy instantly understood that there were enemies hidden around him, the kind that he still couldn't beat. The father and daughter cheered up and quickly approached Peter. They were cautious along the way, 100 meters, 200 meters. There was no movement on the road, so the vigilance of the father and daughter became more and more high. They both knew that this was the calm before the storm. This also showed that the enemies hidden in the dark looked down on their strength at all, and did not think that they could survive the confluence. Threat to yourself. 100 meters away from Peter, the attack was launched from an unexpected place, heading towards the vital points of Big Daddy and Mindy respectively. Fortunately, both Big Daddy and Mindy were prepared to be attacked, and they turned around to dodge without any danger. After a closer look, the weapons turned out to be several toothpicks. The father and daughter came to the wall for the first time to block the next wave of attacks. Before they could find the enemy, the attack came again, this time several times faster than before. Before he could react in time, Mindy's calf was hit first, and was directly hit by the toothpick chain, which made it impossible to complete the rest of the evasion immediately, and the fatal blow aimed at the throat was about to come. At this moment, Big Daddy stomped his feet and exerted all his strength. He hugged Mindy next to him in an extreme burst, blocked the attack with his body, and hurriedly left the place and rushed to a new bunker. After taking cover, Mindy gritted his teeth and pulled out the toothpick from his calf, and then dealt with Big Daddy's wound, only to find that the situation was worse than expected. "I thought it was just a toothpick, but I didn't expect that there was a sharp dagger inserted into Big Daddy's back." The body armor on his body also failed to stop the penetration of the toothpick, and the damage from the two caused the wound on Big Daddy's back to continue to bleed. Mindy asked anxiously, "Father, what's up?" The Big Daddy shook his head, wanting to show that there is nothing wrong with him. This little injury can't kill him, but his body can't lie. Cold sweat appeared uncontrollably. And such a distinctive weapon let Big Daddy know that they were in big trouble, and even ran into a notorious ace killer Bullseye. A bald head walked out from a far corner, approaching step by step with a playing card in his hand, and said jokingly, "It's interesting, I didn't die, but it's really the luck of your life to meet my Bullseye." After simply treating the wound, Big Daddy quickly led Mindy back towards Peter without any hesitation. In the few rounds of fighting just now, Big Daddy already knew that the strengths of the two sides were too disparate in the dark environment. Even if the father and daughter have the determination to die, they may not be able to survive Bullseye. Now the only lifeline is on Peter, so the first choice now is to be able to delay for a second, and achieve the convergence at the fastest speed. At the same time, Big Daddy is also prepared for the worst. If the three of them are still no match for Bullseye after meeting, then he will cut it off and let Peter take Mindy away. As a father, he cannot shirk responsibility. And looking at Big Daddy and Mindy who are gradually going away, Bullseye is in a calm state, calmly observing the pair of prey. After all, as a professional ace killer, Bullseye has never been a reckless person. Before each shot, he will carefully investigate the target's personality traits, behavior habits, hobbies and other information. He never thought that he obtained his current status solely by brute force. During his career as a killer for so many years, he had encountered many people stronger than him, but he was the one who survived in the end. This already explained many facts. After some observation, Bullseye got all the information he wanted, stretched himself like a cat catching a mouse, and looked at his snack tonight. There was even a mocking smile on his face, as if to say, "Praise, run faster or it won't be fun, I will catch up with you soon." Big Daddy kept observing the surroundings, changing directions to choose the best route, but the untreated injury on his back was gradually deteriorating, and his speed was still unable to reach the highest level. Bullseye, who set off later, quickly caught up. Seeing the father and daughter fleeing in front of him, he couldn't help sighing about life. He said with a smile, "The warm-up exercise is over, You father and daughter can go to see God together. What a happy thing this is. You really have to thank me very much." After finishing the life speech at this moment, the whole person rushed forward quickly, using playing cards to attract the first wave of attention. Under his control, the playing cards collided fiercely, danced in the air, and rushed towards Big Daddy and Mindy. Compared with the silent and sudden attack of the toothpick, this time the Big Daddy of playing cards could clearly see its trajectory, turned around and threw 3 predictive grenades, and the explosion successfully blocked the progress of most of the playing cards. Standing aside, Mindy acted as the second line of defense, holding a samurai sword in his hand and accurately chopping a small number of poker cards that could stand out from the encirclement. Big Daddy immediately pulled out his automatic rifle and fired randomly at the bullseye. Just a few bullets from the magazine did not pose much threat to Bullseye. On the contrary, it made the wound worse. The pain of the wound in the unfavorable battle situation made Big Daddy a little distracted during the battle. And Bullseye is indeed a killer who has been rampant in the underworld for many years. He seized this opportunity in the explosion of the grenade and rushed forward like a bolt of lightning. In the next second, he came to Big Daddy's side, with a sharp dagger in his hand, and began to attack the wound on Big Daddy's back continuously. For the first attack, the distracted Big Daddy didn't have time to react. The white knife went in and the red knife came out. The pain instantly swept through his whole body, and cold sweat broke out on his forehead. Fortunately, the physical instinct of fighting for many years still exists, and the Big Daddy rolls to the right subconsciously to avoid the next attack, but the severe pain completely deforms the evasive action, and the body loses balance. The huge flaw made Bullseye choose to take advantage of the victory and chase to expand his advantage. This time, the dagger was slashed towards Big Daddy's neck, and he was about to taste the delicious blood. Everything happened too fast, and the situation changed rapidly in less than 5 seconds. Only then did Mindy realize it. Looking at the flashing figure, she knew that she had no time to think about countermeasures. Mindy decided to take a gamble on Bullseye's extremely conceited mentality, and immediately clenched the samurai sword with both hands, tied the horse's waist in exerted force, and slashed at Bullseye's arm with all his strength. As expected, Bullseye didn't think he needed to trade his arm injury for this attacking opportunity. He could find a better opportunity next time, and Mindy won this gamble. But Bullseye is not a vegetarian. He decisively shifted his hunting target, stomped his feet and turned around to take back the dagger, then raised his foot and kicked Mindy sideways. Mindy, who was desperate, did not avoid this kick, or she had already made up her mind the moment she swung the knife. The abdomen was hit directly by Bullseye's heavy kick, and the body armor on his body couldn't stop the force. The huge impact made Mindy take off backwards, and let out a scream in the air. The Big Daddy, whose forehead was covered with cold sweat, also knelt on one knee to regain his balance with the help of the ground, and pulled the trigger almost instinctively to death with tense nerves. The bullet instantly established a protective line between Bullseye and Mindy, and also dispelled Bullseye's idea of continuing to attack. However, Bullseye has experienced many battles, and he will not leave a room for the enemy to breathe. He charged towards the Big Daddy again, and the dagger in his hand was faintly visible, so that the Big Daddy had to put part of his energy on the dagger. The speed was so fast that the Big Daddy, who didn't care about thinking, shot at the rushing figure, and at the same time rolled to the right to avoid it. The sharp dagger passed by with the momentum of piercing the top of the skull, and he clearly watched the floor tiles in front of him split apart instantly. After the dagger, there's Bullseye's menacing face, a slightly reflective head, and a powerful kick, all timed perfectly. Big Daddy didn't have enough time to dodge, so he chose to use his body and rifle as a shield to resist. In the end, he still underestimated the impact of the injury on his back, and took dozens of steps back before barely resisting Bullseye's kick. Perhaps before he was injured, Big Daddy could compete against Bullseye for a while, but now that he is seriously injured, he has no power to fight back, so he can only defend with difficulty, waiting for the opportunity to counterattack. And Mindy was lying not far away and was trying to get up, but this simple movement was a bit difficult for her. Bullseye's heavy kick just now seemed to have broken Mindy's ribs. She could feel the pain coming from her abdomen, and her body was sending a signal of overwhelm to her brain, warning her not to make any unnecessary movements. Looking at the struggling prey in front of him, Bullseye already felt extremely bored and even disgusted in his heart. A thought flashed in my mind. After all, after-dinner snacks are still not as good as the main meal, and it's time to end this already boring after-dinner exercise. With a wave of his hands, he dealt playing cards to Big Daddy and Mindy, and performed the last beautiful dance of their lives for them, the dance of death. Big Daddy looked at the oncoming poker, and a hint of despair appeared on his face. He had no strength left to dodge the blow. At this time, strands of spider silk passed by, knocking down all the flying playing cards, and a red and blue figure was coming towards this side swinging the spider silk. The Big Daddy fixed his eyes and saw that it was Peter who had decisively left the battle just now, and he finally arrived at this critical moment. After observing the battle situation at the moment, Peter helped the slightly injured Mindy up first. "Can you still move? Someone is chasing after you. Take Big Daddy away first, and leave this place to me." Knowing that he and his father are now powerless to fight, Mindy endured the pain without hesitation and walked towards the old man with a samurai sword, and gave all the information he knew. "Be careful, he is Bullseye, don't be careless." Peter nodded to show that he had received it. Of course he didn't dare to be careless. Strictly speaking, Bullseye should be the first real criminal he encountered in this world. Bullseye on the side could hear the information exchange between the two of them clearly, and he also saw that the masked man in front of him was the last hope of the father and daughter. But he didn't care, and he didn't think that following the masked man would bring him much danger. As the saying goes, wolves will never be with sheep. His face was full of irritability and disdain. Bullseye thought he shouldn't be wasting time here anymore. He had been adhering to the good habit for many years, cut the nonsense, and directly charged to Peter's head and punched him with all his strength. Of course, Peter's choice was to forcefully go back, achieve the dialogue with his fists, and greet him head-on. This is not only the anger in the heart that needs to be vented, but also the cunning type of Bullseye. Head-to-head play is more conducive to the advantage. After all, in terms of actual combat experience, he can't compare with the experienced Bullseye at all, and it's not in their interest to be caught in a protracted war, but they haven't forgotten the main goal tonight. Sure enough, there were no surprises. In this round of power exchange, Peter had the upper hand, and Bullseye was forced to retreat continuously to relieve the arrival of the huge force. At the moment of backing up, Bullseye turned pale with fright. He felt that he had lost control of his body, and his fisting right hand trembled involuntarily. His face darkened. He knew that he should put on all his energy. The masked man in front of him was a formidable enemy, and he couldn't help cursing secretly in his heart. Fuck. There really is a wolf among the sheep, maybe even a wolf king level, what the hell? Bullseye resolutely changed the target of the battle, taking his own interests as the first choice. He didn't want to overturn in such a small place. Besides, tonight's operation was not his task. There was no need to gnaw at this powerful enemy that suddenly appeared. Seeing Peter approaching, Bullseye turned his eyes to the injured two. With a smile on his face, a large number of playing cards, nails and screws rushed towards Big Daddy and Mindy. These items that can be seen everywhere in daily life have all been upgraded and optimized in Bullseye's hands, causing damage comparable to bullets, making them Bullseye's most powerful killing weapon. Inadvertently, Peter still entered the fighting rhythm of Bullseye, and could only keep throwing out spider silk to block the attacking flying objects. But Peter also knew his shortcomings, took a deep breath to maintain a steady state of mind, and calmly observed Bullseye's every move. Since Mindy can't leave for the time being, then adjust the spider silk to the blue flame state, wrap it around the wounds of the two, and give a wave of simple treatment first, so that Big Daddy and Mindy's future choices will also increase. You can fight or retreat. And according to the current crazy throwing speed, even if Bullseye carries more weapons, it won't last long, and it's only a matter of time before they are exhausted. Peter stared at Bullseye's wrist, adjusted his position, and began to count down silently in his heart. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. It was at this moment that the opportunity for a breakthrough came. Peter immediately threw out the spider web and stuck it to the wall above. With a pull of his arms, his body was shot towards the Bullseye like an off-string arrow. But after all, he still underestimated Bullseye's old-fashioned experience. Under his premeditated pulling back and forth, and paying too much attention to the state of Mindy and the two, Peter was voluntarily entered into the factory building. Here, the Bullseye seems to have entered the home field, and the combat power has been soared at a rapid rate. The piles of car repair tools such as wrenches and hammers, and even the stones on the ground have become a new round of throwing weapons. All of a sudden, countless throwing weapons came oncoming, so that even Peter, who had a spider sense, couldn't completely avoid it. The only choice is to bite the bullet and continue to rush forward. Fortunately, it served as the first line of defense. The nanosuit was not broken. You just need to pay attention to avoiding the vital parts. However, it seemed that Peter ignored most of the great situation where the attack was overwhelming, but in fact no effective results were achieved. The Bullseye after entering the factory building was not careless, and kept a certain distance from Peter, which was just right. Bullseye, who is extremely vigilant, makes this battle suspenseful again, and the battle enters a stalemate. But it is good news for Peter. Bullseye can no longer prevent Mindy and Big Daddy from leaving. At the same time, he has also officially entered the invincible position. At this time, he can leave the battle and leave the factory building at any time, but considering that the goal tonight is close at hand, such a perfect timing is really not to be missed. After some thinking, Peter decided to stay and wait and see the development of the matter. Maybe there will be a new turning point. Be patient in everything, and he still has a lot of time to be happy with Bullseye. On the other side of the confrontation, Bullseye clearly felt the change in play style. He knew that his troubles had arisen, and the advantages he had accumulated before were gradually tilting away towards the enemy. At this time, Bullseye still seemed to be in a calm state, but only he himself knew that the anxiety in his heart was about to be uncontrollable. On the one hand, he underestimated Peter's strength and made a mistake in the hostage step, which resulted in the loss of a good hold in the battle. On the other hand, during the fight, he intuitively sensed the gaze of death several times, clearly telling him that there was a deeper existence hidden behind him, which was hostile to him. Although it was just an unfounded feeling, Bullseye was willing to trust his intuition over the years. This enemy is like an experienced hunter quietly staying in the dark, staring at the prey in front of him, waiting for an opportunity, a perfect moment to harvest the whole field. On the other side, there was a third party in the factory. Bell, who had been sent back for treatment before, regained his senses, and the anger in his heart was constantly burning, which could not be calmed down for a long time. It is a great shame to be forced to such a point by a little bug, and it is an indelible stain in his life, which makes him feel uncomfortable with everything around him. When I glanced at the peaceful expressions on the faces of the drug dealers from the corner of the eye, I seemed to see them taunting him. That's it. This level dares to brag here. I'm really laughing at me. The anger in his heart seemed to have found the best outlet. Bell snatched the rifle of the gang member beside him, and the gun rang, and all the rounds of bullets in a magazine poured out. Although the gang members beside him immediately grabbed Bell's arm and pulled it up, half of the bullets flew in the air, but half of the bullets still hit the unsuspecting drug dealer. Whether it was a gang member or a drug dealer, they were all in a dazed state, and the contract that had been agreed to was broken suddenly. No one expected that Bell would dare to do this. And the drug dealers who were shot couldn't accept the fact that they were about to die after they escaped from birth. Such a happy and sad experience made their emotions uncontrollable like a volcanic eruption, and they all burst into curses. The scolding didn't calm Bell down, but added fuel to the fire, fueling the growing anger. Bell showed a ferocious face, pushed away the gang members beside him, and quickly changed the magazine to prepare for another attack. At this time, a figure walked out of the corner, approached Bell like lightning, and slapped off the arm that was changing the magazine. The Desert Eagle in his hand seemed harmless on Bell's waist, but it was actually aimed at his heart, and an extremely deep voice appeared. Calm down. Our task has not been completed yet. There are other voices coming from the door. You take some people to see what's going on. Leave it to me here. You. The threatening persuasion and the sound of the Desert Eagle's safety opening behind him gradually woke up the furious Bell, and he was soon forced to complete a period of calm thinking. He realized how stupid his actions just now were, and he was completely dazzled by anger, and he was caught with such an obvious handle. Bell believes that if there is even the slightest intention to resist, the Desert Eagle behind him will be full of blood. Because the person behind him is not so much a teammate as a specially sent supervisor. The first goal is to prevent Bell from crossing the line, and to decide how to complete the task at the critical moment. Bell, who was in an injured state, believed that his strength was inferior to others, and without saying a word, he took a deep breath, stepped forward to pick up the RPG from the ground, and with a wave of his arm, led the gang members to surround the door. At the entrance of the factory building, the Bullseye that has been circling around saw the people of Bell who were gradually approaching. Their faces were still expressionless, but their bodies changed their direction very consciously so that the two sides could meet. I was even more overjoyed in my heart. The previous anxiety was finally relieved a little bit, and the expected cannon fodder finally arrived, so the next step will depend on whether the group of cannon fodder can perform well. Peter, who was on the other side of the confrontation, naturally also noticed the change in Bullseye's direction, although it was unclear what his next intention was. However, Bell's people are also effective combat power, so they can't simply let them join together, just when they are planning to attack forward. All of a sudden, all the fine hairs on his body stood up abruptly at this moment, and the spider sensor was sending him an early warning signal, dangerous, pay attention to avoid it. Peter immediately looked around, only to see a flash of fire on the opposite building, followed by gunshots piercing the night sky. Although the gunshot was very weak, it was just an ordinary sound to ordinary people. But for Peter, who has followed the Big Daddy for more than half a month, he is completely confident in making a conclusion. This is definitely the sound that only heavy sniper rifles can make. Finding cover became Peter's first thought at this time. From the new position, he saw the direction of the fire, and the bullets roared towards the bullseye. Peter was a little surprised, picked up the earphone and asked suspiciously, "Mindy, is that you?" "I'll go. There's a Oriole behind here, it's simply not human." Peter was speechless about tonight's accident, and even wanted to laugh a little. Seeing Peter's series of abnormal behaviors, Bullseye thought it was just a tactic to lure the enemy, and was planning to play a wave. Soon the reality will make a choice for him, and he also sensed the danger signal. The muscles in his body tensed instantly, and he continued to take deep breaths to adjust his state. At the moment when the bullet was about to hit, Bullseye showed a reaction that surpassed the limits of human beings. He jumped to the right, rolled several times to the wall, and avoided the deadly bullet with a narrow distance. At this moment, without the slightest hesitation, he quickly made the decision to leave the battle and retreat. As an ace killer, running away is not ashamed, and losing his life is the most shameful thing. The current situation is becoming more and more unfavorable. There is this stunned young man right in front of him. His naive combat style makes him know at a glance that he is at the age of a kid, and his mind is full of that useless sense of justice. On the tall building in the distance is an insidious hunter, with so much experience that makes people break out in a cold sweat. He is definitely a peer, and a master of masters. These two powerful enemies, even in a one-on-one situation, Bullseye still needs to think carefully before daring to attack. Needless to say, these two may cooperate now to achieve a two-on-one situation. This kind of life and death matter is not afraid of 10,000, just in case, as the Bullseye of the old Jonghu, he will never be careless. Therefore, these two big gift packages should be given to Bell, and let this reckless man play with them. He has been famous for a long time and doesn't need such a stage. At that time, Bell would also like to thank himself for giving him such a good opportunity, so that his name of Violent Bear could have a chance to be powerful in all directions. Taking advantage of the arrival of the next wave of attacks and the appearance of Bell's people, Bullseye saw the timing and did not return to the factory building. As for Bell, he said that he had never heard of this person. Who is he? In short, Bullseye is going to go tonight, even Jesus can't keep him. When Bell, who was leading the team, saw Peter confronting him in the distance, the anger in his heart burned again, and only the red and blue figure remained in his eyes. He gritted his teeth and made full preparations, and RPG quickly finished reloading and rushed over. You have to give your beloved little bug a huge surprise with your own hands, and taste the sinisterness of this society. It was also this slightly reckless move that allowed Bell to see Bullseye's every move, the completely opposite direction, and the slightly terrified expression. His face sank instantly, and he had to wonder whether there was danger around him, or whether it was at the fatal level. Otherwise, how could such a conceited ace killer like Bullseye avoid his sharp edge, and it can even be said that he ran away. For this inference, Bell expressed disbelief in his heart, but the facts and sense of crisis made him quickly come back to his senses. He thinks that he has always been a self-aware person, but he is very clear about his own strength, and he has not been able to reach the Bullseye level at the peak moment, let alone he is still seriously injured. At this moment, it is considered that the human desire to survive has been brought to the limit, and a storm of thinking is frantically unfolding in the mind, and one response plan after another is formulated, abandoned, and replanned. Bell knew that there was not much time left for him, and he no longer dared to hesitate for a second, and his body took the lead in taking action. The first step is to reduce the burden on the body. Without a word, throw the RPG in your hand directly to the gang members behind you, and roll a donkey towards the back predictably. When the gunshots rang out again, Bell had already rolled and crawled behind the gangsters. In less than 2 or 3 seconds, he used the gangsters in front of him to build a human shield for himself. Most of the gang members couldn't react for a while due to the obstruction of sight and the sudden appearance of RPG. The hot bullet pierced through the human wall like a sharp arrow, and the huge impact took away one life after another. Even though the bullet continued to advance through the flesh and blood, its power remained undiminished, directly piercing through Bell's abdomen. This hit plus the previous abdominal injury, combined with the severe pain, caused Bell to completely break his defense, and he could no longer suppress his instinct for pain, screaming continuously in his throat. But Bell didn't stay where he was. The danger hadn't been lifted, and the next wave of attacks might come at any time, so he endured the pain and continued to retreat until he finally relaxed in a relatively safe place. Immediately afterwards, countless grenades and smoke bombs were thrown from the opposite building, which was exactly the same as the previous wave of gang members' offensive, as if it was taught by the same instructor, and the factory building was once again reduced to a man-made bombing zone. In the factory building, each of the drug dealers struggled with all their strength, even the surrender faction was no exception. Bell's random shooting had completely shattered their illusions. Frank Amick was the first to grab the weapon, but he didn't leave there. He saw the tragic death of the drug dealer and the sober red tornado Chris. The ambition in Frank Amick's heart is constantly growing. If this group of people is wiped out at this time and place, then monopolizing the entire market will not be a distant dream, but a delicacy that is close at hand. Such a great opportunity is really not to be missed. Thinking of this, Frank Amick made a decisive decision and immediately signaled the bodyguards around him to turn their guns and shoot at the drug dealers beside him to create even greater chaos. And shouted, "Kill them all quickly, or we will all die." Under the playing of multiple sounds such as gunshots, curses, threats, and explosions, the big scuffle in the factory kicked off. Frank Amick successfully drags the remaining drug dealers into the murky waters of mayhem. Even if some drug dealers want to leave directly, they cannot escape from the hail of bullets and can only choose to join the melee in the end. Human nature is fully displayed at this moment, because in the smoky darkness, no one wants to believe that the other party will put down the gun in his hand and stop the attack. When the factory building was in chaos, the opposite building also did not stop. Smoke bombs, grenades, shock bombs and other weapons were continuously sent into the factory building, as if they were offering congratulatory gifts to the people fighting in the factory building. Peter, who continued to shift positions, relied on the vision brought by the spider ability to vaguely see a man squatting by the window of the opposite building. The man was wearing a black combat uniform with a white skull printed on his chest. Under the reflection of the gunfire, he looked very resolute. Peter's attire looked more and more familiar. Suddenly, a flash of inspiration appeared in his mind, and gradually coincided with the man in front of him. That was the Punisher Frank Custer. Peter continued to search in his memory. Frank the Punisher was once a special combat instructor of the Marine Corps. After retiring, a family of 4 witnessed the invisible light incident of the Sopranos when they went out for dinner. The whole family was hunted down by the Sopranos. Only Frank escaped. After being discharged from the hospital, Frank found out the murderer who killed his family through his personal connections. At that time, he chose to take the murderer to court, believing that the law could bring him justice. It's just that Frank underestimated the shamelessness of this world. The Sopranos used money and power to clear the way, seduced and bought off all the people in charge of the case. With their help, the Sopranos successfully found a loophole in the law, and the murderer escaped legal punishment. When he saw the murderer was acquitted and walked out of the court, Frank was completely desperate for the country's justice. He decided to seek justice for his wife and children by his own means, and he wanted to kill them with his own hands. Later, he embarked on the road of fighting criminals, and was called the Punisher by criminals. At the same time, due to the principle of as long as you are guilty, you must die, for criminals, everyone will think of him as an anti-hero more often. During the observation process, Peter even discovered an amazing fact: the Punisher is controlling the factory. Only by relying on the sniper rifle in his hand, the two sides that are fighting are always in a state of balance, forming a situation where neither side can completely kill the other. He really deserves to be evaluated as a 10th level agent by Nick Fury, director of S.H.I.E.L.D. And he has not undergone any transformation or mutation, so he must be a 100% normal human being.